In 1895, American heiresses were literally sold for $2.5 million, each to British aristocrats who treated them like breeding stock. The going rate for a duke was higher than for an earl, and your father paid top dollar for yours. Hey, if these stories help you sleep, a like or subscribe would be cool. Also, drop where you're listening from and the time. I always read the comments, and it's crazy seeing people from like Australia and Norway on the same video. All right, let's head back to 1895. Trust me, it's going to be quite a ride. But first, get comfortable. Seriously, adjust those pillows. Pull up that blanket because where we're going, you're going to want to be cozy. The first thing that hits you is the air. Heavy, damp, and tasting of coal. London, 1895. Your eyes adjust to the gray morning light filtering through unfamiliar. Curtains. The bed beneath you isn't the one you grew up with in your family's New York mansion. This one's older, heavier. The sheets are fine linen, but smell faintly of mildew that never quite leaves these ancient houses. Your body aches in places you didn't know could ache. The ocean crossing took 8 days. 8 days of your mother drilling you on proper etiquette, while your stomach heaved with each Atlantic swell. 8 days of trying not to cry as America disappeared behind you, possibly forever. Unlike your cozy bed at home, this mattress is stuffed with horsehair that pokes through in places, and the room is freezing despite it being May. Welcome to your new life as a duchess. You sit up slowly, and that's when reality crashes down again. The ring on your left hand catches the light. Diamonds and sapphires set in platinum, passed down through your husband's family for 3 centuries. It's heavy, too big for your finger. Like everything else here, it wasn't made for you. Good morning, your grace. The voice startles you. A maid, no, your lady's maid, stands by the fireplace. You didn't hear her come in. She's been waiting, watching you sleep. In your family's New York home, servants knocked. Here they appear like ghosts, always present, always observing. Shall I open the curtains full of your grace? She asks, her accent, making the words sound like a different language entirely. You nod because what else can you do? You're no longer Charlotte Miller from Fifth Avenue. You're her grace, the Duchess of Harrington, and you have absolutely no idea what that means. The curtains part, and London spills into your bedroom, or rather one of your bedrooms in one of your houses. Harrington House occupies almost an entire block of Mayfair. It has 64 rooms, 11 fireplaces, and a staff of 38 people who now answer to you. A 20-year-old American who until yesterday had never managed anything more complicated than her social calendar dot. His Grace requests your presence for breakfast in the morning. Room at 9 o'clock. The maid says, already laying out your clothes. Not the clothes you brought from New York. Those were quietly removed from your trunks last night. Apparently, American fashion wouldn't do for a duchess, even an American one. Your stomach twists. You've been married for exactly 16 days, most of which was spent on a ship. Your husband, the Duke, is practically a stranger, a 40-year-old man with cold eyes and a title that's been in his family since the Norman Conquest. You met him exactly 3 times before the wedding, always with chaperones present. What time? Is it now? You ask, your voice sounding small in the vast bedroom. Court 8, your grace. 45 minutes. You have 45 minutes to transform from terrified American girl to English duchess. You want to pull the covers back over your head and vanish, but that's not an option anymore. Your father paid too much for this title for you to hide. Okay, picture this. You're standing in front of a mirror while 3 women you've never met before are literally dressing you. Not helping you dress, dressing you like you're a doll. One holds your corset strings, pulling until your ribs creak, and your breath comes in shallow gasps. Another pins your hair into a style you've never worn. The third kneels at your feet, sliding on silk stockings, because apparently a duchess doesn't even put on her own socks. Is this really necessary for breakfast? You manage to ask between constricted breaths. Your lady's maid Stevens. You think her name looks scandalized. His Grace expects proper appearance at all times. Your Grace, of course he does. The Duke of Harrington, your husband, expects a lot of things. Proper appearance, proper behavior, proper breeding eventually. That's what you're here for. After all, $2 million for a title, a bloodline for an heir, a business transaction dressed up as a love match. The dress they pour you into is navy blue silk with a high collar and too many buttons. It's beautiful in a severe English way. Nothing like the colorful gowns you wore in New York. It makes you look older, more serious, less American. When they finish, you hardly recognize yourself. The woman in the mirror could be anyone. Any English lady with enough money and breeding to look this polished at breakfast time. Is this what your mother wanted when she paraded you through London society last season? Is this what your father paid for? You're guided through corridors, lined with ancestral portraits, all of them staring down with the same cold eyes as your husband. Distant relatives now yours, by contract, if not by blood. The house is a maze designed to impress rather than welcome. Your footsteps echo on marble floors past furniture that hasn't been moved in centuries. The morning room is smaller than you. Expected, but still intimidating with its sill-covered walls and views of the private garden. And there he is, the Duke, your husband, reading a newspaper as if this were any ordinary day. "Ah, Charlotte," he says without looking up. Not my dear, or even good morning. Just your name spoken as if remembering it requires effort. I trust you slept well. Yes, thank you. You lie. You slept terribly, crying silently into a pillow that smelled wrong in a bed that felt like a stranger's. Good, we have much to discuss. He finally looks at you, his gaze assessing rather than affectionate. You'll need to learn quickly. The season is upon us, and everyone will be watching the American. Duchess. The way he says American makes it sound like a disease. You feel your cheeks flush with humiliation and anger. Your family's money was good enough to save his estate, but your heritage remains a shameful secret. I've arranged for Lady Harwick to call this afternoon. She'll begin your education. His mouth twitches in what might be amusement. The Queen has expressed interest in meeting you at next week's garden party. We cannot have you embarrassing the family. The Queen, Queen Victoria, the actual Queen of England, wants to meet you. And all you can think is that you're going to trip over your dress and cause an international incident. A footman appears with breakfast. Eggs, kippers, toast, things that smell fishy and unfamiliar. Your stomach churns again. You're very quiet, Charlotte. The Duke observes, finally setting aside his newspaper. You want to scream. You want to tell him that you've been ripped from everything familiar and comfortable, married to a stranger, and dropped into a world where you don't know the rules. You want to ask if he even sees you as a person or just as the solution to his financial problems. Instead, you say, I'm still adjusting to the journey, Your Grace. Edward, he corrects absently. In private, you may call me Edward. It's the first almost kind thing he's said to you. You try to smile, but your face feels frozen. Your lady's maid, he continues, is she suitable? You have no idea what makes a lady's maid suitable. She seems very efficient. She comes highly recommended. Serve the Countess of Merrick before her passing. He takes a sip of tea. If she doesn't suit, we can find another. The casual way he discusses replacing someone, as if servants are just another piece of furniture to be swapped out, makes you uncomfortable. Back home, your family staff had been with you for years. You knew their names, their families. I'm sure she'd be fine, you say, then immediately wonder if that sounded too American. Should a duchess care more about having the perfect ladies? Maid, I'll be at my club until dinner, Edward announces, standing abruptly. Lady Harwick will arrive at 2. Do try to pay attention to her instructions, Charlotte. The Harrington name has stood for 800 years. I won't have it tarnished now. And with that, he's gone, leaving you alone in a room too big and too quiet, wearing clothes too stiff and a life too strange. Hold up. Let me paint you a picture of what happens next. The moment your husband leaves, a small army of servants appears as if they've been hiding behind the curtains. The butler wants to know your preferences for dinner. The housekeeper needs approval for the weekly menus. The social secretary, yes, you apparently have one of those now, has a stack of calling cards from curious aristocrats who want to inspect the American curiosity. I don't you stammer, overwhelmed by questions you don't understand about people. You've never met regarding customs, you've never learned the social secretary, Mrs. Finch, a thin woman with shrewd eyes, seems to take pity on you. Perhaps, Your Grace, we might review these matters after your session with Lady Harwick. You could kiss her. Yes, that would be preferable. The others withdraw with small bows and curtsies, leaving you with Mrs. Finch. If I may be so bold, your Grace, she says once the others have gone, might I suggest a tour of the house? It would be beneficial for you to become familiar with your new home. Your new home. 64 rooms of guilt and history and judgment. But Mrs. Finch is right. You can't hide in the morning room forever. Yes, thank you, you say, standing straighter, trying to channel your mother's confidence. That would be most helpful. The next hour passes in a blur of rooms, each more intimidating than the last. The main drawing room where you'll receive important visitors. The blue drawing room for more intimate gatherings. The formal dining room, which seats 40. The library with books older than your entire country. The Duke's study which you're informed you should never enter without invitation. Your brain swims with rules. Never use the grand staircase when the small one will do. Never address the butler in front of guests. Never wear diamonds before evening. Never, never, never appear anything less than perfect. By the time you reach the portrait gallery, your head is pounding. Generations of Harrington stare down at you, men with Edward's same cold eyes, women with tight smiles who came before you. Many of them American heiresses just like you. Their fortunes consumed by this ancient house and its insatiable needs. This is the late Duchess, Mrs. Finch says, stopping before a portrait of a severe-looking woman with Edward's thin mouth, his. Grace's mother. You study the painting, looking for clues about the family you've married into. The woman looks proud, unyielding. There's no warmth in her painted eyes. What was she like, you ask, hoping for some insight. Mrs. Finch hesitates, her professional demeanor slipping for just a moment. She was devoted to maintaining the dignity of the Harrington name, Your Grace, which tells you absolutely nothing and everything all at once. And this, Mrs. Finch continues, moving to the next portrait, is the 8th Duke and Duchess, American like yourself. The woman in this painting is younger, prettier, with something sad around her eyes despite her formal pose. Another dollar princess. Another American girl sold to save an English title. What happened to her, you ask, unable to look away from those sad eyes? She died quite young, Your Grace. Childbed fever after delivering the heir. Your stomach drops. Of course, the heir. That's what awaits you, too. Pregnancy, childbirth, producing the next duke to continue this ancient line. It's what your father paid for, what Edward expects, what England demands of you. In your head, you're screaming, "This is how I die." In this cold country, in this colder house, giving birth to a child who will inherit everything. including their father's disdain for anything American. Mrs. Finch must notice your expression, because her voice softens slightly. Perhaps we should continue to the gardens, Your Grace. The fresh air might be beneficial. You nod, unable to speak, and follow her down more corridors, past more judging ancestors through more rooms where you don't belong. The gardens, at least, are beautiful, formal English landscaping stretching toward a small lake. In the distance, you can see groundskeepers working. More staff you'll never really know. The roses are particularly fine in June, Mrs. Finch says, watching you carefully. The late Duke was most proud of them. You think of your family's garden in Newport, wild with summer flowers, the ocean breeze carrying salt and freedom. Here, even the flowers are constrained, growing in neat, predictable patterns. Your Grace, Mrs. Finch says after a moment of silence, if I might offer some advice. You turn to her, desperate for any guidance. Please, English society can be challenging for those not born to it. But you're not the first American to become a duchess, and you won't be the last. She straightens her already perfect posture. Observe carefully. Speak little until you're certain, and remember that, while they may judge your accent or your manners, your position is unassailable. You are the Duchess of Harrington. Now, it's the most honest thing anyone has said to you since you arrived. Not comforting exactly, but real. Thank you, Mrs. Finch, you say, meaning it. A clock chimes somewhere in the vast house. Mrs. Finch checks her watch. Lady Harwick will arrive shortly, Your Grace. We should return to prepare for her visit. You? Take one last look at the garden, at the tiny piece of England that's supposedly yours now, and follow Mrs. Finch back into the mausoleum you're expected to call home. The house feels even larger from the inside than it did from your carriage. Last night, the ceilings soar so high they disappear into shadow. The furniture, mostly 18th century by the look of it, seems designed for discomfort rather than use. Everything gleams with the labor of servants you'll never fully see. Your Grace, if I may, Mrs. Finch says as you approach the main staircase. Lady Harwick is traditional in her views. It would be wise to listen more than speak during your first meeting. Great. Another person who's going to find you hopelessly American and unsuitable. I understand. Very good. Your Grace. Stevens will assist you in changing for Lady Harwick's visit. Changing again? Is this outfit not appropriate? You gesture to the navy silk dress you've been wearing for barely 3 hours. Mrs. Finch's expression doesn't change, but you sense her internal wincing. Morning. Attire is not suitable for afternoon call as Your Grace. Stevens will have prepared something more appropriate. Of course, heaven forbid you wear the same dress for an entire day. You nod and head upstairs, each step feeling heavier than the last. Your bedroom? No, the Duchess's bedroom, which still feels like someone else's space, has been tidied in your absence. Stevens is already waiting, with yet another outfit laid out on the bed. Lady Harwick is quite punctual, Your Grace, she says by way of greeting. We should begin dressing immediately. And so the process starts again, unlacing, relacing, pinning, buttoning. This dress is dark green with elaborate beading. It weighs a ton. The corset is tightened even further, if that's possible. Your hair is adjusted, your face powdered, your entire being reshaped into something alien. Will I need to change again before dinner? You ask, trying not to sound as exhausted as you feel. Of course, Your Grace. Dinner requires evening dress. Stevens says this as if it's the most obvious thing in the world. You close your eyes briefly. 4 outfits in one day. In New York, you might change for a special dinner or ball, but not. Just to sit in different rooms of your own house. Your Grace, Stevens says, breaking into your thoughts. Lady Harwick has arrived. You brace yourself, pulling your shoulders back despite the protest of your corseted ribs. Time to meet the woman who's going to teach you how to be English. Lady Harwick is waiting in the smaller drawing room. A tiny bird-like woman dressed entirely in black, despite not being in mourning. Her gray hair is pulled so tightly into a bun that it seems to stretch her skin, giving her a perpetually surprised expression. She doesn't stand when you enter, which you're pretty sure is a deliberate slight. So she says, examining you through a lorgnette, "You're the American, not your Grace or Duchess, just the American." You force a smile and extend your hand. "Charlotte Harrington. It's a pleasure to meet you, Lady Harwick." She ignores your hand, which hovers awkwardly in the air before you withdraw it. "Sit," she commands, gesturing to a chair opposite hers. You sit, trying to maintain your dignity despite the humiliation burning in your cheeks. "Let us be clear from the beginning," Lady Harwick says, setting aside her lorgnette. "You have purchased a title that has been in Edward's family for centuries. Your father's railroad money may have saved Harrington House, but it does not automatically make you worthy of being its mistress." The brutal honesty takes your breath away. In New York, people might gossip behind your back, but no one would ever be this direct to your face. You begin, as she cuts you off with a raised hand. "I am not interested in your feelings, child. I am here at Edward's request to ensure you do not embarrass him or the Harrington name. You will listen, you will learn, and you will become what England requires of you." In your head, you're thinking, your brain's doing the math. No bath for 3 months. Duck. Death by smell. Except it's not smell that's going to kill you here. It's these people with their rigid rules and colder hearts. But outwardly, you simply nod. What else can you do? You're alone in a foreign country, married to a stranger, surrounded by people who see you as nothing more than a walking bank account. "Good," Lady Harwick says, apparently satisfied with your submission. "We shall begin with the basics, the proper forms of address for various ranks of nobility. And so begins your education as a duchess." For the next 2 hours, Lady Harwick drills you on an endless list of rules. Never address a duke before he addresses you, unless you outrank him by marriage, which you now do in some cases. A fact that seems to pain Lady Harwick physically. Never turn your back on someone of royal blood. Never discuss politics, religion, or money in polite company. Your head spins with titles and protocols. Heirs versus viscounts, younger sons of marquises, dowager duchesses, lady this, and lord that, each with their own precise form of address that will mortally offend them if you get it wrong. Your posture is atrocious. Lady Harwick announces suddenly, "Stand." You obey, rising on legs that have gone numb from sitting so long. Back straight, shoulders down, chin parallel to the floor, she demonstrates her own posture, impossibly rigid. A duchess does not slouch. You try to mimic her stance, feeling like a performing monkey. "Better," she concedes reluctantly. "Now walk to the window and back." You do as instructed, painfully aware of her critical gaze. Smaller steps, she snaps. You're not racing to catch a street car. English ladies glide. They do not stride. For the next 15 minutes, you walk back and forth across the drawing room, adjusting your pace, your posture, the position of your hands until Lady Harwick is marginally satisfied. "We shall work on your curtsy tomorrow," she says finally. "And your accent, that flat American sound, must be softened. Even the way you speak isn't good enough." You swallow hard against the lump forming in your throat. "One last thing," Lady Harwick says, rising from her chair. "The Queen, you are to be presented next week. Your stomach drops so soon." Her Majesty is curious about Edward's American bride. Lady Harwick's tone makes it clear this isn't a compliment. "You will curtsy deeply. We shall practice extensively and speak only when spoken to. Address her as Your Majesty first, then ma'am thereafter. Keep your answers brief and defer to her in all things. Meeting Queen Victoria, the most powerful woman in the world. The thought makes you elated. Do not disgrace the Harrington name. Lady Howick adds, gathering her things. Remember that when you appear before the Queen, you represent not only yourself, but centuries of English nobility. No pressure or anything. Lady Harwick departs with a promise, or perhaps a threat, to return tomorrow for another lesson. You remain in the drawing room after she leaves. Too drained to move, too overwhelmed to think. This is your life now. Endless rules, constant judgment, a husband who sees you as a solution to his financial problems, and a society that sees you as an interloper. You're a duchess in name, but a prisoner in reality. A soft knock at the door interrupts your spiraling thoughts. Mrs. Finch enters, her face carefully neutral. Your Grace, His Grace, has sent word that he will be dining at his club this evening. Would you prefer to dine in your rooms or in the small dining room? Alone. You'll be dining alone on your second night in England. Part of you is relieved not to face Edward and his cold scrutiny. Another part aches with loneliness so profound it's physical. My rooms, please, you say, not wanting to sit by yourself in that cavernous dining room. Very good, Your Grace. Finch hesitates, then adds, would you care to write to your family this evening? I could arrange for stationery to be brought to your sitting room. The mention of your family breaks something inside you. Your mother who pushed for this match with single-minded determination. Your father who treated your marriage like a business merger. Your sisters who envied your fairy tale wedding to a duke. Do any of them understand what they've sentenced you to? Yes. You manage to say thank you. When Mrs. Finch leaves, you cross to the window, looking out at the London afternoon. Rain has started to fall, gray and relentless, mirroring your mood. Carriages roll past on the street below, carrying people with destinations and purposes. Meanwhile, you're trapped in this gilded cage, expected to transform yourself into someone unrecognizable dot in this moment, standing alone in a stranger's house that's supposedly yours, wearing clothes that don't feel like yours, bearing a title that doesn't feel like yours. You make a silent promise to yourself. You will learn their rules. You will master their customs. You will become what they need you to be. But deep inside, in the place they can't reach, you'll remain Charlotte Miller from New York. And someday, somehow, you'll find a way to make this life your own. Unlike your warm bed back home, this room feels empty despite its opulence. The rain taps against the windows like distant Morse code, spelling out messages from a world that now seems impossibly far away. You place your hand against the cold glass, watching your breath fog the pain. The only proof that there's still something alive in this mausoleum of tradition. Tomorrow, you'll begin again. Lady Harwick and her endless rules. A household waiting for your direction. A husband you barely know. A queen you're terrified to meet. But tonight, just for these quiet hours, you allow yourself to remember who you were before you became Her Grace. The Duchess of Harrington. Before your father sold you for a title, and your mother measured your worth in aristocratic connections. You remember summer afternoons in Newport, salt air and freedom. You remember laughing without worrying who might be listening. You remember being Charlotte, just Charlotte. The girl you were seems like a stranger now, as distant as the New York skyline you watched disappear from the deck of the ocean liner. Yet you carry her with you still, hidden beneath corsets and titles, waiting. Somewhere in this vast cold house, a clock chimes the hour. Another day in your new life has almost passed. One down, thousands to go. Morning comes too soon. You open your eyes to the same unfamiliar ceiling, the same heavy curtains, the same sinking feeling in your stomach. For one blissful moment between sleep and wakefulness, you forget where you are. Then Stephen Honk's voice cuts through the fog. Good morning, Your Grace. Lady Harwick will arrive at 10 o'clock for your lessons. Day 2, as a duchess begins exactly like day 1, being dressed by strangers, picking at unfamiliar food, and preparing to be judged. The rain from yesterday has cleared, but the sky outside your window remains stubbornly gray, as if England itself refuses to welcome you. Edward, your husband, though the word still feels foreign in your mind, left a note rather than appearing. In person. Business in the city, it says. Dinner tonight with Lord and Lady Wexford. It warns. Be prepared. Be prepared. As if you have any idea what that means. Okay, imagine trying to curtsy in a dress that weighs more than a small child. Wow. Balancing a book on your head and being stared at by a woman whose face seems permanently frozen in disapproval. That's your morning with Lady Herrick. Again, she commands after your 5th attempt. Lower, smoother. You're not collapsing, Your Grace. You're honoring. Your thighs burn with the effort. The heavy beaded dress you've been stuffed into makes balance. Nearly impossible. The book, some ancient volume of English poetry, wobbles dangerously on your head. My lady, you begin, desperate for a break. Lady Harwick, she corrects sharply. Not my lady. That form of address is for servants speaking to. Their employers. Another mistake. You've lost count of how many you've made this morning. Lady Harwick, you try again. Perhaps we might rest a moment. She sigh like you've suggested burning down Buckingham Palace. The Queen will not rest a moment, Your Grace. Nor will English society pause while you catch your breath again. And so, you dip again into a curtsy that makes your knees protest and your spine strain against whalebone and lacing. Your hands, Lady Harwick scolds, not clenched, relaxed, graceful. Lady Harwick's like your curtsy is an insult to 800 years of English nobility, and you're thinking your face is an insult to human evolution. But outwardly, you just adjust your hands, trying to make them look relaxed while your entire body screams with tension. In your head, you're screaming, I paid $2.5 million to be treated like this. Well, your father did. And right now, you'd give another $1 million just to be back home. In New York, lounging in the garden with a novel, instead of performing like a trained seal for this withered aristocrat. Better, Lady Harwick concedes finally, though her tone suggests better is still miles from acceptable. Now, let us review the dinner service. How many pieces of silverware should be at each place setting for a formal dinner? You hesitate, mentally, counting the ridiculous array of specialized utensils you were introduced to yesterday. 1622, she corrects with obvious disappointment, each with its specific purpose and order of use. We shall practice at luncheon. The thought of eating under her critical gaze makes your appetite vanish, but you nod obediently. This is your life now. Endless lessons in things no rational person would consider important. After luncheon we shall discuss household management. Lady Harwick continues, consulting a small notebook. As Duchess, you are responsible for overseeing a staff of nearly 40 at Harrington House alone, not counting the country estate. You must learn their duties, their hierarchies, and how to properly direct them without seeming to give direct orders. Heaven forbid a duchess actually tells someone what to do in clear language. Everything here is wrapped in layers of suggestion and implication. You're beginning to understand why the English aristocracy is dying out. They're too exhausted from following their own rules to reproduce. Is something amusing Your Grace? Lady Harwick asks sharply. You realize you've been smiling at your own thoughts. No, Lady Harwick, I'm simply eager to learn. She doesn't believe you. Her pinched expression makes that clear. But she continues. This afternoon, the dressmaker will arrive for your fitting. The garden party at Buckingham Palace is only 5 days away, and your current wardrobe is entirely unsuitable. The garden party meeting the Queen. Your stomach twists with anxiety. What will be expected of me? To be silent unless spoken to curtsy properly, to represent the Harrington name with dignity. Lady Harwick closes her notebook with a snap. In short, to be English, not American. For at least one afternoon, the morning drags on. You practice walking with books on your head. You memorize the correct order of precedence for seating aristocrats at dinner. You learn which fork is for shellfish and which for dessert. By luncheon, your brain feels stuffed with useless information, none of which seems designed to help you navigate your actual life. The dining room, the small one, which still seats 12 comfortably, is set for 3. Lady Harwick, you enter your. Surprise, Edward has returned from his business in the city. Charlotte, he greets you with a brief nod. Lady Harwick tells me you're making progress. The way he says it makes it clear the progress is insufficient. You force a smile. I'm trying your Edward. The garden party, he says, taking his seat at the head of the table. You understand its importance? Yes, you answer, though you're not entirely sure you do. Is it just about meeting the Queen, or is there more at stake? The Harringtons have served the crown for centuries. Edward explains, apparently reading your confusion. Royal favor is essential to our position. The Queen has expressed specific interest in meeting you. It is unusual, Lady Harwick sniffs. Her Majesty has always had a curiosity about Americans, ever since that Churchill woman married Lord Randolph. You've heard of Jenny Jerome Churchill, another American heiress who married into British nobility. Her son Winston is apparently quite brilliant. Perhaps there's hope for American duchesses after all. The Queen will ask about your family. Edward continues. Your father's business, your education. You will respond truthfully, but briefly. No rambling American anecdotes, as if you dare. I understand. Do you? Edward's gaze is cool. Everything we have, this house, our position, the Harrington legacy, depends on maintaining proper relationships. The Queen's favor, society's respect. These are not trivial matters, Charlotte. In other words, don't embarrass him. Don't remind anyone that he had to marry American money to keep his precious legacy intact. Don't be too American. I won't disappoint you, you say, the words tasting bitter. The servants begin serving luncheon, some kind of clear soup that smells faintly of herbs. You watch Lady Howick carefully, mirroring her every move. Napkin just so. Spoon from the outside in. Sip. Don't slurp. Back straight. Shoulders down. The Wexfords, Edward says after a moment of silence. They're dining with us tonight. The Earl is a close friend from school. His wife is traditional. Another test. Another opportunity to fail. I look forward to meeting them. You lie. Lord Waxford serves on several important committees with his Grace. Lady Howick adds their connection is valuable to the Harrington interests. Everything here is about connections, about invisible threads of influence and favor. In New York, power was simpler. Whoever had the most money won. Here it's about bloodlines and traditions, and unspoken alliances stretching back generations. Luncheon passes in a blur of corrections for Lady Harwick. Your soup spoon is angled wrong. You've taken too large a bite of fish. Your posture has slipped dot by the time the dessert arrives, some sort of blondang that quivers unnervingly on the plate. You're so tense your jaw aches from clenching. Edward, meanwhile, seems oblivious to your distress. He discusses estate matters with Lady Howick as if you're not present. Tenant farmers, crop rotations, repairs needed at the country house. The conversation flows around you, not including you. After luncheon, Edward disappears again with barely a goodbye. Lady Howick leads you to the morning room, where a massive ledger awaits. The household accounts, she explains. As Duchess, you must review them weekly with the housekeeper and butler. You open the ledger, confronted by columns of neat figures, coal, candles, meat, Fish, wine, wages. The cost of running Harrington House is staggering. No wonder Edward needed your father's. Millions. I've never managed household accounts before, you admit. Lady Harwick's expression suggests this confession ranked somewhere between admitting illiteracy and confessing to murder. Naturally not. American households are run like hotels. I understand. All vulgar excess and no proper accounting. You think of your mother, who ran your family's New York mansion and Newport cottage with military precision, who knew every servant by name and kept immaculate records of every expense. The assumption that Americans can't manage households properly stings. I'm a quick learner. You say more sharply than intended. Lady Harwick raises an eyebrow at your tone, but continues. You'll meet with Mrs. Hughes, the housekeeper, every Monday morning. Mr. Phelps, the butler, every Tuesday. The cook every Wednesday to plan menus. Thursday is for correspondence. Friday for charitable works. The Harrington name is associated with several important causes. Your week is being carved up into duties before you've even had a chance to settle in. Every hour accounted for, every action prescribed. When do you begin, then stop, unsure how to ask. Yes, Lady Harwick prompts. When do I have time for myself? The question sounds even to your ears. Lady Harwick looks genuinely puzzled. For yourself? You are the Duchess of Harrington now, Your Grace. Your time belongs to your position, your husband, and your future children. Yourself is a luxury you sacrificed when you accepted the title. The truth of it hits you like a physical blow. You didn't just marry Edward. You married an institution, a legacy, a role that will consume you entirely if you let it. The dress. Maker arrives at precisely 2:00. Madame Beaumont, a stern French woman with pins clenched between her teeth and measuring tape dangling around her neck like a bizarre necklace. Undress, she commands without preamble. You glance at Lady Harwick, who nods. Apparently, modesty is another luxury duchesses don't enjoy. Stevens helps you out of your dress and corset, leaving you standing in your chemise and drawers, while Madame Beaumont circles you like a shark. American, she mutters, measuring your waist with brisk efficiency. Trop mass, too thin. English ladies, they have more substance. Lady Harwick makes a sound that might be agreement. You feel like livestock being assessed at market. Arms up, Madame Beaumont orders, pulling the tape measure across your shoulders. The garden party dress must be perfect. The Queen, she notices everything. For the next hour, you stand nearly naked, while two women discuss your body, as if you're not present, too thin, shoulders too square from American tennis, complexion too tanned, hair too simply styled. By the time they finish, you feel like every inch of you has been found wanting. Madame Beaumont eventually produces sketches for your approval, though approval seems a formality, as Lady Harwick immediately selects the most conservative design. The garden party dress will be cream silk with delicate embroidery, modest, elegant, thoroughly English. And of course, new undergarments, Madame Beaumont adds, making notes, the American corsetry is all wrong. Too much room for breathing. Heaven forbid you be able to breathe properly while meeting the Queen. By 4:00, Lady Harwick finally departs, leaving you with a stack of books on English history, aristocratic genealogy, and proper deportment. Your homework essentially. The door has barely closed behind her when you collapse onto the nearest sofa, physically and mentally exhausted. Your Grace, you startle at the voice. It's Mrs. Finch, the social secretary, hovering in the doorway. Yes, Mrs. Finch. The calling cards, Your Grace. She approaches with a silver tray piled with small white cards. These arrived today. You should return calls to Lady Pembroke and Lady Harewood tomorrow. They're close to the Queen, and they're good. Opinion would be valuable. More obligations, more tests. You nod wearily. Of course. And Mrs. Finch hesitates, which catches your attention. She's normally so composed. There's a Lady Ashford who's requested to call tomorrow afternoon. She's well. She's American like yourself. Another American married to an Englishman. The thought of speaking to someone who might understand your situation is like a lifeline thrown to a drowning woman. Yes, you say immediately. Please tell her I'd be delighted. Mrs. Finch nods, a hint of sympathy in her eyes. Very good. Your Grace, I'll arrange it for 3 o'clock after your session with Lady Harwick. After she leaves, you remain on the sofa, staring at the ceiling. An American visitor, someone who might understand the isolation, the constant criticism, the feeling of being a foreign object inserted into this ancient machinery. For the first time since arriving in England, you feel a flicker of hope. That flicker dims considerably when Stevens arrives to begin preparing you for dinner. Another elaborate dressing ritual, another gown, burgundy silk this time, with a neckline cut lower than you're comfortable with. Another hour of hair arranging and jewelry selecting. His Grace has instructed that you wear the Harrington rubies. Tonight, Stevens informs you, opening a velvet box to reveal a necklace of blood-red stone set in heavy gold. The necklace is placed around your throat, its weight surprisingly substantial. In the mirror, you barely recognize yourself. The rubies gleam against your skin like wounds. The gown transforms your figure into something more mature, more imposing. Your hair is arranged in an elaborate style that makes your head ache. You look English, beautiful. Your Grace, Stevens murmurs, adjusting a final curl. You're not sure beautiful is the right word. Transformed might be more accurate. Or erased. The Wexfords arrive precisely at 7. Lord Wexford is a portly man with impressive whiskers and a booming laugh. Lady Wexford is thin, aristocratic, and immediately reminds you of Lady Harwick. The same assessing gaze, the same barely concealed disdain. The American Duchess, Lord Wexford says, kissing your hand with slightly too much enthusiasm. Charming. Absolutely charming. How interesting to meet you. Lady Wexford adds her tone, suggesting. Interesting is not a compliment. We've heard so much about your father's railroads. And there it is, the reminder that you're not really a duchess in their eyes. You're just the daughter of a man with enough money to buy his way into their world. Edward appears at your side, hand at the small of your back, guiding you toward the drawing room. The touch is not affectionate, but proprietary, a reminder to perform your role correctly. Charlotte has been working diligently with Lady Harwick, he tells the Wexfords, as a footman serves sherry. The Queen has expressed interest in meeting her at next week's garden party. Indeed, Lady Wexford's eyebrows rise. How unusual. Her Majesty has always had a soft spot for Americans, Lord Wexford says with a chuckle. Ever since young Winston Churchill started making a name for himself. Blood will tell. The conversation circles around people you don't know, events that happened before you were born, and subtle social cues you can't begin to decipher. You smile when Edward glances your way, nod at appropriate intervals, and try desperately not to make any obvious mistakes. Dinner is announced, and Edward leads Lady Wexford in while Lord Wexford offers you his arm. The dining room, the formal. One this time, gleams with silver and crystal. Candles flicker in heavy silver candelabras. Footmen stand at attention around the perimeter, watching, waiting, judging. I understand you're to be presented at court as well, Lady Wexford says as the soup is served after the garden party. You look to Edward, who hasn't mentioned any court. Presentation? He nods slightly. Yes, arrangements are being made. Another test you haven't been prepared for. Your anxiety spikes. My niece, Lady Mary, is being presented this season. Lady Wexford continues. Such a lovely girl. Properly educated at home, of course, not sent to one of those modern schools. The Wexford bloodline goes back to the conquest. You know, the implication is clear. Lady Mary represents everything you're not English, properly educated from an ancient bloodline. How fascinating you managed to reply, using the exact tone your mother employed when dealing with tedious social climbers in New York. The American educational system is quite different. Of course, my schooling included mathematics, sciences, and 3 modern languages in addition to the usual feminine accomplishments. Lady Wexford looks slightly taken back by your response. Edward shoots you a warning glance. Too American, his eyes say too direct. But Lord Wexford laughs. Capital. The girl has spirit. Harrington. Good American spirit? That's what the old families need these days. Fresh blood and fresh thinking. Dinner proceeds through its many courses. You navigate the array of silverware successfully, thanks to Lady Harwick's drilling. You make appropriate small talk about the weather, dreadful London society, exclusive, and the upcoming season promising. You avoid politics, religion, and anything remotely controversial. By the time the ladies withdraw to the drawing room, leaving the men to their port and cigars, you're mentally exhausted from the constant vigilance. You've done well with her, Edward. You overhear Lord Wexford say, as you exit. Still American, of course, but not entirely hopeless. In the drawing room, Lady Wexford sips her coffee and studies you openly. Tell me, Duchess, how are you finding English society? Very different from New York, I imagine. You choose your words carefully. Different in some ways. Yes, but fundamentally, society is society wherever one goes. There are always rules to follow and appearances to maintain. She seems neither impressed nor offended by your answer. And your family, they've returned to America. Yes, after the wedding, leaving you quite alone. There's a hint of something, almost like sympathy in her voice. It's never easy being a foreign bride in England, even for Americans. You look at her more closely, wondering if there's actual human feeling beneath the aristocratic facade. No, it's not easy. The first year is the worst, she says, surprising you. The loneliness, the constant feeling of being judged and found wanting, the cold. She sips her coffee. English houses are always cold. Have you noticed? Even in summer, you're so startled by this momentary connection that you answer honestly. I thought it was just me. I've been freezing since I arrived. Extra blankets, she advises, and a hot water bottle. The servants won't think to provide them unless you specifically ask. They assume we're all made of sterner stuff. For a brief moment, she's not Lady Wexford, intimidating aristocrat. She's just a woman offering practical advice to another woman. Then the moment passes, and her expression becomes remote again. You'll adjust, she says, or you won't. The title remains either way. When the men rejoin you, the conversation turns to hunting, Edward's passion, politics, carefully general, and London gossip. People you don't know doing things you don't understand. You smile until your face hurts. Laugh at jokes that aren't funny and count the minutes until the evening ends. Finally, the Wexfords depart in a flurry of thank yous and promised reciprocal invitations. The door closes behind them, and you sag slightly, the tension of the evening catching up with you. Not entirely disastrous, Edward observes, which you suppose is his version of a compliment. Though you were rather forward with Lady Wexford about your education, she was rather forward about my inadequacies, you counter, before you can stop yourself. To your surprise, Edward's mouth twitches in what might almost be amusement. Yes. Well, Augusta Wexford would find inadequacies in the Archangel Gabriel. The important thing is that Wexford himself was impressed. His influence with the Queen is significant. Always the Queen, always influence and connections and appearances. Is there anything in Edward's world that isn't calculated for advantage? I'm tired, you say, suddenly unable to maintain the pretense any longer. If you'll excuse me. He studies you for a moment, then nods. Of course, tomorrow will be another busy day. Another day of lessons and judgments and reminders that you're not what they wanted, just what they needed to pay their debts. You climb the grand staircase slowly, feeling the weight of the Harrington rubies around your neck. The weight of the Harrington name on your shoulders, dot in your bedroom. Stevens helps. You undress in silence. The rubies are returned to their velvet box. The elaborate gown is whisked away. Your hair is unpinned, brushed, and braided for sleep. You're prepared for bed as meticulously as you were prepared for dinner. Every step a ritual, every movement. Choreographed dot when Stevens finally leaves. You stand at the window looking out at the London night. Somewhere out there in one of those houses with gleaming windows is Lady Ashford, the American who's coming to call tomorrow. Someone who might understand, someone who might offer guidance through this maze of rules and expectations. You crawl into the massive bed, pulling the two thin blankets around you, thinking of Lady Wexford's advice about hot water bottles. It's a small thing, but it feels like the first practical help you've received since arriving. Tomorrow will bring Lady Harwick and her endless lessons. It will bring new challenges, new opportunities to fail. But it will also bring Lady Ashford, and with her, perhaps a small slice of home. You close your eyes, exhausted, but slightly less despairing than the night before. One small step at a time, one rule mastered, one dinner survived, one connection made. You're still Charlotte Miller from New York, even if you're hidden beneath layers of silk and title and expectation. And tomorrow, you'll meet another woman who's walking the same tightrope between worlds. Sleep comes more easily tonight, despite the unfamiliar bed and the cold that seeps through the walls of this ancient house. You dream of hot water bottles and American voices and Queen Victoria asking you about railroad stocks while you balance books on your head and curtsy until your knees give out. By your third day in London, you've established a routine of sorts. Wake up cold. Get dressed by Stevens while pretending to be fully awake. Eat a breakfast you don't really want. Endure Lady Harwick's lessons until your brain feels like it's been stuffed with cotton wool. The monotony is almost comforting until you remember that today Lady Ashford is coming. An American, another woman who crossed an ocean for a title. Someone who might actually understand. Lady Harwick notices your distraction during the morning's lesson on the correct way to address the younger sons of dukes versus the younger sons of ears. Your Grace, she says sharply. Am I boring you? No, Lady Harwick, you answer automatically. I'm simply processing the information. She sniffs. Processing. How very American. In England, we simply learn. You bite back a response about how in America. Education involves understanding rather than rote memorization. Lady Ashford is coming at 3. You just need to survive until then. The morning crawls by. You practice your curtsy until your thighs burn. You memorize the names and titles of every person you might conceivably meet at the Queen's garden party. You learn which flowers are appropriate for which occasions. No lies at weddings. No chrysanthemums in mixed company. Never ever tulips. Lady Ashford, Lady Harwick says during luncheon, her tone making the name sound like a disease. She's calling. This afternoon. Yes, you reply, trying to keep your voice neutral. Mrs. Finch arranged it. H.M. Lady Harwick butters a piece of bread with surgical precision. Catherine Ashford, another American, married Lord Ashford 5 years ago. A Boston girl, I believe. The way she says Boston girl suggests it ranks somewhere below scullery maid in her estimation. Is there something wrong with Lady Ashford? You ask, unable to hide your concern. If Lady Harwick disapproves, does that mean Edward will forbid the visit? Wrong? No. Lady Harwick takes a small, deliberate bite of bread. She's simply modern in her views. Lord Ashford indulges her rather more than is traditional. Modern sounds promising. Indulged sounds even better. I'll be sure to maintain proper decorum during her visit. You promise? Lady Harwick gives you a look that suggests she doesn't believe you for a second. See that you do. The Harwick name has stood for 800 years. You finish mentally along with her. By the time 3 o'clock approaches, you're practically vibrating with anticipation. Stevens has dressed you in a reception gown of pale blue silk, understated by American standards, but still formal enough to receive a vice contest. You wait in the smaller drawing room, perched on the edge of a chair that's been in the Harrington family since before your country existed. The clock on the mantel ticks loudly in the silence. Lady Ashford, Phelps announces from the doorway, and your heart leaps. She sweeps in like a breath of fresh air, tall, o'er-haired, dressed in a gown that's just a touch more fashionable than English propriety dictates. Her smile is genuine, her eyes sharp and intelligent. "Your Grace," she says with a perfect curtsy. "Thank you for receiving me." You rise, remembering at the last second that you're supposed to extend your hand for her to take, not shake hers American style. "Lady Ashford, I'm delighted you could come. The formalities observed." She glances at Phelps, still hovering in the doorway. "Tea, I think, and perhaps some privacy." Phelps looks momentarily startled. English visitors would never dismiss the butler so directly, but recovers quickly. "Of course, my lady. Right away." When the door closes, Lady Ashford's posture changes. Subtly, the aristocratic bearing softens, and suddenly she's just a woman in her early 30s, with laugh lines around her eyes and a conspiratorial smile. "Well," she says, her Boston accent slipping through. "Another American in the lion's den. How are you holding up, Duchess?" The direct question, the familiar accent, the simple human concern, it all hits you at once. And to your horror, your eyes fill with tears. "That bad, huh?" Lady Ashford sits beside you, patting your hand. "I cried every day for the first month, sometimes twice. My lady's maid thought I had some kind of medical condition." You laugh through your tears. "Mine probably thinks the same. I'm sorry. I don't usually fall apart in front of strangers." "Of course not. You're American. We're practical people." She hands you a handkerchief from her reticule. "But you're not with a stranger. You're with a fellow survivor of the Anglo-American marriage treaty. Survivor, not victim." The word choice gives. You hope. How did you begin and stop? Unsure how to phrase the question. Survive. Lady Ashford finishes for you. One day at a time, with help, with friendship, and with the understanding that for all their history and tradition, the English aristocracy needs us far more than we need them. The tea arrives, giving you a moment to compose yourself. When the servants withdraw, Lady Ashford leans forward. "Tell me everything," she says. "The good, the bad, and especially the parts where you wanted to strangle someone with their own creat. Stay with me here, because this is where it gets weird." For the next hour, you talk more freely than you have since leaving America. Lady Ashford, call me Catherine, please, at least when it's just us. Listens, nods, occasionally laughs, and offers advice born of experience. "Lady Harwick," she says, rolling her eyes when you describe your etiquette lessons. "That woman is a walking fossil, useful for understanding the ancient past, but not much help with the present. She's very knowledgeable. You feel compelled to defend, even though you've thought much worse about your tormentor, Dot. Oh, she knows which fork to use and how to curtsy to a dogger duchess. But does she understand what it's like to be a woman in 1895, to have crossed an ocean and left everything familiar behind? To navigate a society that both needs you and resents you. Catherine shakes her head. For that, you need friends who've walked the same path. Friends, the word sends a surge of longing through you. Are there many of us American women married to Englishmen? More than you think, and more arriving every season. Catherine's eyes twinkle. We even have a name for ourselves. The dollar. Duchesses, though some of us are just countesses, or Vic countesses. The dollar duchesses, you repeat, testing the phrase. It sounds slightly vulgar, exactly the sort of term Lady Harwick would faint at hearing. We help each other, Catherine continues. Advice, support, warnings about which aristocrats to avoid at parties. She leans closer. And we meet regularly. Discreetly. You meet? This sounds dangerously close to conspiracy. Wouldn't our husbands object? Our husbands, Catherine says with a slight edge to her voice, are generally too busy with their clubs, their politics, or their mistresses to notice. Our little gatherings. Besides, we're just ladies taking tea together. What could be more proper? The way she says it makes it clear, these are not just social calls. There's purpose behind these meetings. When you ask, already knowing you'll attend, even if you have. To lie to Edward about where you're going. Friday, 4 o'clock. Lady Winchester's house on Park Lane. Catherine writes the address on a calling card and slips it to you. She's one of us. Married the Earl of Winchester 3 years ago. Brought enough Chicago meatpacking money to restore their country estate and pay off generations of gambling debts. You tuck the card into your sleeve, feeling like a spy with secret information. I'll be there. Good. Catherine's expression grows more serious. Until then, a word of advice about the garden party. The Queen is not what you might expect. She's sharper than people realize, and she has a soft spot for Americans, despite what the old guard might tell you. Be respectful, but authentic. She's seen enough searing debutantes to last several lifetimes. A clock chimes 4, startling you both. Catherine rises with a sigh. I should go. Aristocratic visiting hours are so tediously rigid, but I'm glad we had this chance to talk. Charlotte, the use of your first name, so natural and friendly, brings tears to your eyes again. Thank you for everything. She squeezes your hand. Welcome to the sisterhood, Duchess. Remember, Friday at 4. After Catherine leaves, you sit alone. In the drawing room, her calling card hidden in your sleeve, her words echoing in your mind. The Dollar Duchesses, a sisterhood. For the first time since arriving in England, you feel something like hope. The feeling lasts until dinner, when Edward casually mentions that you'll be attending Lady Dunmore's musical evening tomorrow. I thought the garden party wasn't until next week, you say, fork pausing halfway to your mouth. The garden party is next week, Edward confirms. Lady Dunmore's event is a rehearsal of sorts. Your first public appearance as Duchess of Harrington. Your first public appearance. Your first opportunity to embarrass yourself. Embarrass Edward, and disgrace the Harrington name that has stood for 800 years. How many people will be there? You ask, trying to keep your voice steady. 50 or 60, intimate by London standards. Edward takes a sip of wine, the cream of society. Several close to the Queen. So not just any 50 or 60 people, the most important, most judgmental, most aristocratic people in London, watching you, evaluating you, waiting for the American Duchess to make a mistake. I see you managed to say Edward studies you across the table. Lady Harwick assures me you're adequately prepared. Adequately prepared. Like a dish that's been cooked just long enough to avoid food poisoning, your appetite vanishes. I'll do my best not to embarrass you, you say, unable to keep a hint of bitterness from your voice. It's not about embarrassment, Charlotte. Edward's tone is almost gentle. It's about integration. You're a Harrington now. These people, Their opinion matters to our position. Our future. Our position. Our future, not yours and mine. The Harrington legacy. I understand, you say. Because what? Else can you say? That night you lie awake for hours staring at the ceiling. Catherine's words competing with Lady Howick's in your mind. Be authentic, but be proper. Be American, but not too American. Make connections, but follow the rules. Tomorrow, London society will get its first look at the American Duchess of Harrington, and you have no idea if they'll see a triumph or a disaster. I bet you're wondering how this little party went. Let me paint you a picture. Lady Dunnor's music room is a marvel of aristocratic excess. Gilt-edged mirrors, sill-covered walls, and a Steinway grand piano that probably cost more than most people's. Houses. The room buzzes with a low murmur of upper-ass English voices, the women in evening dress, the men in impeccable black and white. You stand just inside the doorway, Edward at your side, feeling like a butterfly pinned to a board. Every eye in the room turns to assess you, the American interloper who's married into one of England's oldest families. Courage, Edward murmurs, so quietly only you can hear. It's the closest thing to support he's offered since your arrival. Next 2 hours blur into a parade of introductions, curtsies, and carefully modulated small talk. You navigate the social minefield with Lady Harwick's lessons ringing in your ears. Don't speak until spoken to. Don't sit before a higher-ranking lady sits. Don't discuss politics, religion, or anything remotely controversial. The Duchess of Marlborough, a fellow American, Consuelo Vanderbilt, gives you a sympathetic glance across the room, but doesn't approach. She's surrounded by her own circle of aristocratic admirers, playing her role to perfection. The American Duchess, a voice says behind you, the tone making it clear this is not a compliment. How exotic. You turn to find yourself face to face with Lady Dunnor herself, a formidable woman in her 50s, with a kind of practiced smile that never reaches her eyes. Lady Dunnor, you say, executing a perfect curtsy. Thank you for including me in your lovely event. How could I not? Everyone is simply dying to meet the woman who captured Harrington. Her gaze travels over you, assessing, judging, though I must say, you're not what I expected. Oh, you keep your smile fixed in place. And what did you expect, Lady Dunnor? The blunt question catches her off guard. Catherine's advice, be authentic, gives you courage. Well, Lady Dunnor recovers quickly. One hears such things about American women, so forward, so modern. The way she says modern makes it sound like a contagious disease. I hope I won't disappoint you too greatly. You reply with just a hint of irony. A young man nearby smothers at laugh. Lady Dunnor's eyes narrow slightly before she moves on to her next victim. Careful, the young man says, stepping closer. Lady Dunnor has a long memory and a sharp tongue. He's perhaps 30, handsome in an English way. Fair hair, blue eyes, the kind of aristocratic features that come from centuries of selective breeding. Lord James Winters. He introduces himself with a slight bow. No title of my own, I'm afraid. Just a younger son with more manners than prospects. There's something refreshingly unpretentious about him. A twinkle in his eye that suggests he doesn't take the pageantry of aristocratic life too seriously. Charlotte Harrington, you reply. Then remember your new status. I mean, the Duchess of Harrington. Still getting used to the title? His smile is understanding rather than mocking. Must be a rather dramatic change. New York to London. You've been to New York? Hope flares at the thought of someone who might understand the world you've left behind. Several times my brother, the Earl, with all the land and none of the sense, sent me to investigate American investments. He lowers his voice conspiratorially. I rather think he hoped I'd return with an heirs of my own. Alas, I came back with only business contracts and a taste for proper cocktails. You laugh, the sound surprising you after days of careful restraint. New York does make excellent cocktails. Criminal what passes for a mixed drink in London. Lord James agrees, though I did discover a small establishment near Covent Garden that makes a passable Manhattan. Perhaps Charlotte. Edward's voice cuts through the conversation as he materializes at your side. I see you've met Lord James. There's a coolness in his tone that wasn't there before. You realize with a start that you've been talking to Lord James. For several minutes, laughing, enjoying yourself, while Edward was elsewhere in the room. Is that not allowed? Are duchesses supposed to remain silently decorative until their husbands return? Yes, we were just discussing New York. You explain. Indeed, Edward's expression is unreadable. The Countess of Warwick was asking after you. We shouldn't keep her waiting. It's a dismissal, not just of the conversation, but of Lord James himself. The younger man takes it with good grace, bowing slightly to you both. A pleasure, Your Grace, he says. I hope we'll have the chance to continue our discussion of American spirits another time. As Edward leads you away, his hand firm on your elbow, you sense his disapproval. Lord James is known for his appreciation of American women, he says quietly. It would be best to maintain a certain distance. The implication is clear. Lord James is a flirt, possibly worse, and not an appropriate companion for the Duchess of Harrington. The warning stings. You weren't flirting, just having a normal conversation with someone who didn't treat you like an exotic specimen or a walking bank account. The Countess of Warwick turns out to be yet another aristocratic matron with perfect posture and a skeptical gaze. The conversation is stilted, formal, filled with references to people and events you don't know. You smile until your face hurts, laugh at jokes that aren't funny, and try desperately to remember every lesson Lady Harwick drilled into you. When the musical portion of the evening begins, a soprano performing Italian arias, you're seated between Edward and an elderly duke who falls asleep halfway through the first song. The music washes over you, beautiful but distant like everything else in this new life. Your gaze drifts around the room, taking in the elaborate gowns, the perfectly coiffed hair, the fortunes and jewels adorning throats and wrists and ears. These people are your peers now, supposedly, but you've never felt more like an outsider. Across the room, Lord James catches your eye and gives you a small sympathetic smile. You quickly look away, remembering Edward's warning, but the brief moment of connection lingers, a reminder that not everyone in London society views you as an intruder or a curiosity. The soprano finishes to polite applause. Tea and small cakes are served. More introductions, more carefully regulated conversation. You perform your role flawlessly, or at least without obvious mistakes. Edward seems satisfied, if not pleased, by the time your carriage arrives to take you home. Exhaustion has settled into your bones. The constant vigilance, the careful self-monitoring, the weight of the Harrington expectations, it's all so much. Heavier than you imagined. You did well, Edward says as the carriage pulls away from Lady Dunnor's house. It's the closest thing to a compliment he's given you. Thank you. You reply, too tired to feel much pride in the achievement. Did I integrate successfully? He glances at you, perhaps catching the hint of irony in your voice. The Countess of Warwick found you charming. Lady Pembroke has invited us to dinner next week. Lady Dunor was less enthused, but her opinion carries. Less weight than it once did. A successful debut, then, by the cold calculus of aristocratic approval. You should feel triumphant. Instead, you just feel tired. And Lord James, you ask before you can stop yourself. Was my conversation with him a social failure? Edward's jaw tightens slightly. James Winters is charming and welcomed, but he has a reputation, a certain recklessness with women, particularly American women. I see. You look out the carriage window at the darkened London streets. I wasn't flirting with him, if that's what you're concerned about. I'm concerned about appearances. Charlotte. Edward's voice is cool. A young, beautiful duchess will attract attention. Some of it welcome, some not. It's important to be discerning. Beautiful. He called you beautiful. It's the first time he's commented on your appearance at all, and it catches you off guard. You? Look at him. Really look at him in the dim light of the carriage. He's handsome in a stern English way. Strong jaw, straight nose, eyes that could be warm if they ever softened. I'll be more careful. You promise. Unsure if you mean it. When you arrive home, Stevens is waiting to help you undress, to remove the diamonds from your hair, to transform you from duchess back to woman. The ritual is becoming familiar, if not comfortable. Alone in your massive bed, you think about the evening, the judgmental gazes, the careful conversations, the brief moment of genuine connection with Lord James. You think about Catherine and the mysterious meeting of dollar duchesses scheduled for Friday. You think about the garden party looming next week and the Queen who waits to pass judgment on yet another American bride. Your world has expanded and contracted simultaneously. From the freedom of New York to the gilded cage of aristocratic London, every step is observed, every word analyzed, every action weighted with centuries of expectation. But beneath the silk and diamonds and careful manners, you're still Charlotte Miller from Fifth Avenue. You survived your first public appearance. You made connections. Lady Warwick, Lord James, and most importantly, Catherine Ashford and her sisterhood of dollar duchesses. Small victories, perhaps, but victories nonetheless. Sleep comes more easily tonight, and you dream of Friday afternoons and secret sisterhoods, and a future where you might find your footing in this strange new world, where you might even find something like happiness or at least purpose in the life you've been sold into. Tomorrow brings Lady Harwick and more lessons. A day after, another dinner with strangers who will evaluate your worth based on your accent and your manners. But Friday brings Catherine and the dollar duchesses. And for the first time since arriving in England, you have something to genuinely look forward to. Friday arrives with the weight of anticipation. The intervening days have passed in a blur of lessons, formal dinners, and careful conversations. Lady Howick continues her relentless education, drilling you on everything from the correct way to pour tea. Never fill the cup more than 3/4 full, to the proper distance to maintain when walking with various ranks of nobility. 3 steps behind a royal, 2 behind a duke, not your husband, 1 behind an earl or marquess. You absorb it all with outward compliance and inner rebellion. Each rule, each correction, each subtle sigh of disapproval when your American accent slips through. They're all stones in the wall being built around you. But now you have a secret. Catherine and the dollar duchesses a crack in that wall. Edward has been preoccupied with the state business, appearing only at dinner to inquire about your progress with Lady Howick, or to inform you of upcoming social obligations. He seems satisfied with your performance at Lady Dunn's musical evening, though. He hasn't mentioned Lord James again. At breakfast, you gather your courage to mention your plans for the afternoon. I've received an invitation to take tea with Lady Winchester, you say, keeping your voice casual. On Park Lane, I thought I might accept. Edward glances up from his newspaper. Winchester, Chicago money, if I recall correctly. Yes, her husband is the Earl. He considers this, and you hold your breath. The Winchesters are well connected despite their recent elevation. It would be a useful acquaintance. Recent elevation as if a title that's only been in the family for 300 years instead of 800 is practically nouveau riche. Then I have your permission to go. You hate having to ask. Hate the way marriage has reduced you to seeking approval for a simple social call. Of course, take the carriage. Be back by 6 o'clock, We're dining with the Pembrokes tonight. Another dinner, another performance, but you're too focused on the afternoons. Secret meeting to worry about that now. Thank you. I'll be prompt. Lady Winchester's house on Park Lane makes Harrington House look positively modest. A limestone palace with columns and balconies, and more windows than you can count. It screams. American money married to English title. Footmen in elaborate livery usher you inside through a marble entrance hall where a crystal chandelier the size of a small carriage hangs overhead. The Duchess of Harrington, the butler announces as you enter a drawing room larger than most ballrooms. And there they are, the dollar duchesses. 7 women of various ages, all beautifully dressed, all wearing the kind of jewelry that only comes with serious money, all watching you with expressions ranging from curiosity to sympathy to assessment. Catherine. Ashford rises first, coming to greet you. Charlotte, I'm so glad you could come. The use of your first name immediately sets the tone here. You're not just the Duchess of Harrington, you're Charlotte, Lady Winchester. A striking blonde woman in her 30s approaches next. Welcome to our little gathering, Duchess. Or should I say, welcome to the American Embassy. The others laugh, and you realize this is an old joke among them. Call me Charlotte, please, you say, and the simple request feels like shedding a heavy cloak. Then I'm Emma, Lady Winchester replies. All that lady business is for public consumption only. She introduces the others. Margaret, Countess of Dorset. Pittsburgh Steel, Louisa Vick, Countess Harding, San Francisco Shipping. Pamela, Lady Thornfield, Boston Banking. Clara, Marchionesses of Westmere, Philadelphia Real Estate. And Sarah, Duchess of Broughton, New York Finance. Each woman represents a different American fortune, a different English title, a different transaction disguised as a love match. You're ushered to a seat in the circle, a cup of tea pressed into your hands, and suddenly the questions begin. How are you settling in? Has Lady Harwick driven you mad yet? Have you met the Queen? How terrible is your mother-in-law? It's overwhelming, but in the best possible way. Genuine interest, genuine concern, genuine understanding. Ladies, Catherine intercedes finally. Let's not terrify her on her first visit. Charlotte's only been in London for a week. A week? Sarah, Duchess of Broughton, widens her eyes. You poor thing. You're still in the what have I done phase. When does that phase end? You ask only half joking. The women exchange glances. It doesn't exactly, Emma says carefully. It just evolves. Into what? Resignation, says Louisa. Adaptation, offers Margaret. Strategy, says Clara with a slightly wicked smile. They each tell a piece of their story. How they came to England, how they struggled, how they survived. Emma's husband gambled away half her fortune before she took control of the purse strings. Margaret's mother-in-law tried to send her back to America when she didn't produce an heir in the first year. Louisa discovered her husband had a second family in Scotland. They need our money, Clara says bluntly. But they resent needing it, and they definitely resent us. Not all of them, Catherine amends. Some of the younger generation are different, more accepting, like Lord James Winters, Pamela adds with a knowing smile. I hear he was quite attentive to our newest Duchess at Lady Dunnor's musical evening. You feel your cheeks flush. We only spoke briefly about New York. James is one of the good ones. Catherine says his brother, the Earl, married an American too. Helen Woodbury from Baltimore. She's abroad at the moment, or she'd be here today. Edward, my husband, warned me about him, you admit, said he has a reputation with American women. The women exchange glances again, something unspoken passing between them. Lord James appreciates American directness, Catherine says carefully. And yes, he's been linked romantically with several American visitors to London. But he's also a valuable ally One of the few aristocrats who treats us as equals, not just walking bank accounts. Wait, it gets better. Emma's like, you want to know the real reason most of these English lords warned their wives away from James? He encourages us to maintain some independence, to keep a portion of our money in our own names, to have a voice, and how our fortunes are spent. And you're thinking, so basic human dignity is a threat to the aristocracy. Cool. There's a moment of silence as you absorb this. The idea of maintaining financial independence hasn't even occurred to you. Your father transferred your dowry directly to Edward. $2.5 million in railroad stock. The income now controlled entirely by your husband. Is that possible, you ask? 2. Maintain control of your own money? It's not just possible. It's essential, Clara says firmly. My husband nearly bankrupted us both in his first year as Marquess. I had to take drastic measures. She threatened to return to Philadelphia and stop the flow of funds. Emma explains with admiration. The Marquess sobered up very quickly. I still handle all the estate finances, Clara adds. Henry has an allowance like a child. It's humiliating for him, but better than debtor's prison. The thought of Edward on an allowance is so absurd you almost laugh. He's the Duke of Harrington. He has 800 years of aristocratic authority behind him. And yet, I don't even know the state of the Harrington finances. You confess? I've seen the household accounts, but nothing about the estate itself. The women exchange significant looks. That's your first task, then. Catherine says, knowledge is power, Charlotte. Find out exactly what your money is paying for. The conversation shifts to other matters. The upcoming season, a garden party at Buckingham Palace, the latest gossip about the Prince of Wales and his many mistresses. But your mind keeps returning to the finances, to the possibility that you might have more control than you realized. We meet every Friday, Emma tells you as the gathering winds down. Sometimes here, sometimes at Catherine's, occasionally at Broughton House when Sarah's husband is away, which is often, Sarah adds dryly. The Duke finds Paris more entertaining than his wife. Will you join us next week? Catherine asks. After your garden party, we'll want to hear all about the Queen. Yes, you say, without hesitation. Yes, I'd like that very much. As your carriage carries you back to Harrington House, your mind races with everything you've learned. These women, these dollar duchesses, have carved out spaces for themselves within the rigid constraints of aristocratic marriage. They found ways to maintain their American identities while navigating English society. They've built a sisterhood across the divides of title and background. For the first time, you can envision a future here that isn't just about endurance. A future where you might actually have a voice, a purpose beyond producing an heir and maintaining the Harrington legacy. But first, you need information. You need to understand exactly what your father's millions are funding. Dinner with the Pembrokes passes in a blur of conversation. You barely register. You smile at the right moments. Speak when spoken to. Perform. Your role is Duchess to perfection, but your mind is elsewhere, turning over plans and possibilities. When you return home, Edward retires to his study with brandy and cigars. You should go upstairs, should let Stevens prepare you for bed. Instead, you find yourself hesitating in the hallway outside Edward's study, gathering courage. You knock softly. Enter, he calls, sounding surprised. No one disturbs the Duke in his sanctuary, Dot. He looks up from his desk as you slip inside, his expression questioning. Charlotte, is something wrong? No, you say, moving further into the room. It's deeply masculine. Dark wood paneling, leather chairs, shelves of books that look actually read rather than just displayed. I wanted to ask you something at this hour, but he gestures to the chair opposite his desk. What is it? You sit smoothing your skirts, choosing your words carefully. I realized today that I know very little about the Harrington estates, the finances, the management. In America, my father often discussed business matters with my mother and me, that it was educational. Edward's eyebrows rise slightly. Business matters are hardly appropriate topics for ladies. Charlotte, perhaps not in England, but I find I'm curious about how our wealth is being utilized. The slip doesn't escape him. His jaw tightens. Your father's settlement was quite generous. Yes, it has been put to good use, I assure you. I'm sure it has. I would just like to understand the details. You keep your voice light, reasonable. After all, as Duchess, shouldn't I have some understanding of the estates I'm helping to manage? The estate manager and I handle those matters. Edward's tone cools further. Lady Harwick is instructing you on household management, which is the proper domain for a duchess. You think of Clara, who manages her husband's entire estate, of Emma, who controls the pursed strings of the Winchester fortune, of Catherine, who speaks of strategy and independence. I understand, you say, rising from the chair. I just thought it might be helpful if I had a broader picture, but of course you know best. The slight irony in your tone isn't lost on him. His eyes narrow. Has something happened, Charlotte? You seem different this evening. You think of the afternoon with the dollar duchesses, of the freedom to speak your mind, to be called by your name, to be seen as a person rather than a title. Not at all. You lie smoothly. I'm simply trying to fulfill my role as duchess as completely as possible. He studies you for a long moment, then nods. A commendable goal. Perhaps when you're more settled, we can discuss the broader estate matters. For now, focus on your presentation to the Queen. That's of primary importance. It's a dismissal, gentle but firm. You've been denied, but not definitively. A small victory, of course. Good night, Edward. Good night, Charlotte. You leave his study feeling strangely energized by the encounter. He didn't agree, but he didn't forbid either. More importantly, you asked. You expressed a desire beyond simple compliance. It's a tiny step toward the kind of independence the dollar duchesses described, but it's a step nonetheless. Upstairs. As Stevens helps you undress, you catch sight of yourself in the mirror. You look different somehow. Still the same face, the same features, but there's something in your eyes that wasn't there before. A spark, a hint of the woman you might become. The garden party at Buckingham Palace looms just days away. The Queen, the ultimate arbiter of social acceptance, waits to pass judgment on yet another American bride. But now, instead of dread, you feel a flicker of determination. You will meet the Queen not just as the Duchess of Harrington, but as Charlotte, a woman finding her own path in this strange new world. Sleep comes easily that night, filled with dreams of secret sisterhoods in financial ledgers, and a future where you might be more than just a walking dollar sign with a title. The next morning brings an unexpected opportunity. Edward announces at breakfast that he must go to the country. Estate Harrington Park, for 2 days to deal with tenant-farmer issues. You'll remain in London. Of course, he says the garden party is Tuesday, and Lady Harwick still has much to cover with you. Of course, you agree. Mind already racing with possibilities. 2 days without Edward's watchful presence. 2 days to explore, to investigate, to learn. He leaves after breakfast, the house immediately feeling different without his austere presence, quieter, less oppressive. You proceed through your morning lesson with Lady Harwick with renewed patience, knowing that the afternoon will be yours. When Lady Harwick finally departs, you waste no time. The study, Edward's inner sanctum, calls to you. The servants will be surprised to see you enter, but they won't stop the Duchess from going anywhere in her own. Stevens, you say, when you return to your room. I'll be reviewing some correspondence in His Grace's study this afternoon. I'm not to be disturbed unless it's urgent. Stevens looks startled, but nods. Yes, Your Grace. The study feels different without Edward in it. Less intimidating, though still undeniably masculine. You move around the space, taking in details you missed last night. Family photographs in silver frames. Military medals in a display case. A map of the Harrington holdings spread across one wall marking thousands of acres across 3 counties. I know. Sounds fake. But wait. You know, the financial records. Must be here somewhere. Edward wouldn't trust anyone else with such sensitive information. The desk seems the obvious place to start, but you hesitate. Searching your husband's desk feels like a violation, a breach of the trust that's supposed to underpin marriage. But then, what kind of trust exists in a marriage arranged for money and title? Edward has never pretended to love you. He's never even pretended to particularly like you. You are a means to an end for him. Financial salvation, wrapped in an appropriate aristocratic package. Decision made. You begin with the desk drawers. Most contain what you'd expect. Writing paper, pens, sealing wax, the everyday tools of correspondence. But the bottom drawer is locked. You sit back, frustrated. Of course, it wouldn't be that easy. Your gaze travels around the room, looking for where a key might be hidden. That's when you notice the book on the side table. A volume of Shakespeare's. Histories. A ribbon marking a place. Edward reading Shakespeare doesn't quite fit with your understanding of him. Curious, you pick up the book, open it to the marked page. Henry V. And there, nestled in the binding, is a small brass key. Your heart pounds as you return to the desk. Fit the key into the lock of the bottom drawer. It turns with a soft click, and the drawer slides open to reveal several leather-bound ledgers. You lift them out with trembling hands. Open the topmost one on the desk. Column after column of figures stretches across the pages. Income, expenditures, investments, loans. The financial anatomy of the Harrington estates laid bare. It takes you a moment to make sense of it all. Your father taught you to read financial statements. An unusual education for a young woman, but one he insisted on. Never trust anyone else with your money, he would say. Not even your husband. Especially not your husband. As the figures begin to coalesce into meaning, a picture emerges that makes your stomach clench. The Harrington estates were not merely in difficulty before your marriage. They were on the verge of complete collapse. Mortgages on the London house, on the country estate, on properties you didn't even know existed. Gambling debts, failed investments, loans from moneylenders at ruinous interest rates. And then the week after your wedding, a transformation. Debts paid, mortgages cleared, investment accounts established. A financial resurrection made possible by your father's millions. But what truly chills you is the second ledger, the current accounts. Money flowing out as quickly as it had flowed in. New loans, new debts, racing losses, and a recurring payment to someone identified only as L substantial sums delivered monthly to an address in Chelsea. You sit back, mind reeling at the current rate of expenditure. Even your vast dowry will be depleted within 5 years. And then what? What happens to the Duchess of Harrington when the dollars run out? The sound of the front door opening startles you from your thoughts. Voices in the hall. Edward's voice. He's returned early. Heart racing, you quickly return the ledgers to the drawer. Lock it. Replace the key in the Shakespeare volume. You're barely out of the chair when the study door opens. Edward stops short at the sight of you, his expression shifting from surprise to suspicion. Charlotte, what are you doing in here? You force a smile, mind scrambling for an explanation. I was looking for something to read. Lady Harwick suggested. I familiarize myself with English history, and I thought you might have something suitable. His gaze travels to the bookshelves, then back to you. Does he believe you? You can't tell. "I'm sorry to have returned so suddenly," he says after a moment. The situation at Harrington Park was less complex than anticipated. "I'll be able to attend the garden party after all." "Wonderful," you manage to say. "I'm glad you'll be there." You move towards the door, eager to escape before he notices anything amiss, but he blocks your path, studying your face with an intensity that makes your pulse quicken. "Are you quite well, Charlotte? You look flushed. Just a slight headache, you lie. I thought reading might help distract me." His hand rises, touches your forehead in a gesture that might be concern or might be assessment. You don't feel feverish. "Perhaps you should lie down before dinner." "Yes, I think I will." "Excuse me." He steps aside, allowing you to pass, but his gaze follows you out of the room. You can feel it between your shoulder blades, questioning, evaluating. In your bedroom, you sink onto the edge of the bed, mind still processing what you've discovered. The Harrington finance is precarious despite your dowry. The mysterious payments to L, the rate at which your father's millions are vanishing. Knowledge is power, Catherine had said. Now you have knowledge. The question is, what will you do with it? You think of the dollar duchesses, each finding her own way to navigate the treacherous waters of aristocratic marriage. Clarata, who took control of her husband's finances. Emma, who threatened to cut off funds from America. Catherine, who speaks of strategy and independence. You are not just a dollar duchess. You're Charlotte Miller from New York. Your father taught you about business, about finance, about protecting what's yours. And somewhere beneath the layers of silk and title and expectation, that woman still exists. The garden party looms just days away. The Queen waits to evaluate you, to decide if you're worthy of the aristocratic world you've been thrust into. But now there's a new urgency to your situation. It's not just about social acceptance anymore. It's about survival. Because one thing is now abundantly clear. The Harrington legacy may have stood for 800 years, but without your American dollars, it won't stand much longer. And if Edward is already burning through your dowry at this rate, what will be left for you if things go wrong? What safety net exists for an American duchess whose usefulness has been exhausted? These questions swirl in your mind as you prepare for dinner, as you smile and converse and pretend that nothing has changed, but everything has changed. You've glimpsed behind the curtain of aristocratic splendor to the desperate reality beneath. And now, like the dollar duchesses before you, you must decide how to use that knowledge to carve out a place for yourself in this glittering, treacherous world. The day of the garden party dawns bright and clear, as if even the notoriously fickle English weather knows better than to disappoint the Queen. You've barely slept, your mind still churning with financial revelations and unanswered questions. Who is the mysterious L receiving monthly payments? Why is Edward burning through your dowry so quickly? And most importantly, what can you possibly do about it? But those questions must wait. Today belongs to Queen Victoria and the performance of a lifetime. The ritual of dressing begins hours before you're due at Buckingham Palace. Stevens and 2 other maids flutter around you like anxious birds, washing, powdering, lacing, arranging. The garden party dress, cream silk with delicate embroidery, modest yet undeniably elegant, is lowered carefully over your head, adjusted until it falls in perfect lines. Your hair is twisted and pinned until your scalp aches, adorned with tiny pearl combs that belong to some long-dead Harrington duchess. You look beautiful. Your Grace, Stephen says, standing back to assess the final result. In the mirror, a stranger stares back at you, poised, polished, perfect. A proper English duchess, with no hint of the turmoil beneath the surface. No sign of the woman who spent yesterday piecing together a husband's financial deceptions. Edward appears in the doorway, resplendent in formal morning dress, his expression unreadable as he surveys you. Satisfactory, he pronounces, which you've learned is high praise indeed. The carriage is waiting. On the ride to Buckingham Palace, he reviews protocol for the 1000th time. Remember, it's your Majesty. For the first address. Ma'am, thereafter, curtsy deeply, but not extravagantly. Speak only when spoken to. Keep your answers brief and differential. I remember, you say, fighting the urge to snap that you're not a child or an idiot. Lady Harwick has drilled these rules into you for days. I won't embarrass you. He glances at you sharply. This isn't about embarrassment, Charlotte. It's about establishing our position. The Queen's favor is essential to the Harrington legacy. You finish mentally. I understand. You say aloud. I know my role, and you do. Your role is to charm the Queen, to secure the social position that Edward needs to maintain his status, to be the perfect Duchess while he squanders your father's millions on God knows what or who. The carriage joins a procession of others approaching the palace. A glittering parade of aristocrats in their finest, all vying for the same royal approval. Footmen in royal livery direct vehicles through the gates, through a courtyard to a sprawling garden where mares dot the lawns and a military band plays in the distance. Remember, Edward murmurs as he helps you from the carriage. The Queen notices everything. The gardens are a carefully orchestrated tableau of power. Hundreds of guests mill about in their finery, divided into distinct social clusters that you can now recognize after weeks of Lady Howick's instruction. The highest aristocracy here, political figures there, diplomats in their own enclave, social climbers hovering at the edges of more established groups. And somewhere in this carefully stratified crowd is the Queen of England, the woman whose approval can cement your place in this world or consign you to its margins. Edward steers you through the throng with practiced ease, nodding to acquaintances, exchanging brief pleasantries, but always moving purposefully. You recognize familiar faces. Lady Denore, with her perpetual expression of faint disapproval. The Countess of Warwick, who found you charming. Lord Wexford, with his impressive whiskers. And then, unexpectedly, Lord James Winters looking dashing in formal attire, his fair hair catching the sunlight. Your Grace. He greets you with a perfect bow. You look radiant today. Before you can respond, Edward's hand tightens on your arm. Lord James, I didn't expect to see you here. My brother was indisposed. Lord James explains smoothly. Someone had to represent the family, and I drew the short straw. His eyes twinkle with humor that softens the formality of the occasion, though now I see it as the long straw. Indeed, the compliment hangs in the air between you. Edward's jaw tightens almost imperceptibly. If you'll excuse us, he says coolly, we're expected elsewhere. Of course, Lord James bows again. I hope we'll have the chance to speak later, Your Grace. As Edward leads you away, you can feel his disapproval, radiating like heat. That man is becoming a nuisance, he mutters. You think of what Catherine told you, that Lord James encourages American wives to maintain independence, to keep control of their finances. No wonder Edward dislikes him. He was only being polite, you say mildly. He was being familiar, Edward corrects. And you were encouraging him. I barely spoke 2 words. It's not what you say, Charlotte. It's how you look at him. The accusation stings partly because there's a grain of truth to it. You do find Lord Jane's company refreshing. His lack of pretension, his genuine interest in America, his easy smile. But to suggest you're behaving inappropriately is unfair and infuriating. Before you can formulate a response that won't cause a scene, a ripple of attention passes through the crowd. Voices lower, postures straighten, all eyes turn toward a central marquee where a small round figure in black has appeared, surrounded by attendants, the Queen. Come, Edward says, all other concerns forgotten in the face of this crucial moment. She's receiving now. You follow him toward the royal enclosure. Heart pounding against your ribs so hard, you're sure the embroidery on your dress must be vibrating. All your lessons, all your preparation, all your careful study of protocol. It all comes down to these next few minutes. A line has already formed. Aristocrats awaiting their moment with the monarch, each maintaining a careful distance from the others based on rank and precedence. Edward guides you into position somewhere in the middle of this hierarchy, and you stand in silence, watching. Those ahead of you approach the Queen, curtsy or bow, exchange a few words, then withdraw. The line moves slowly. The sun beats down on your neck. Your corset feels tighter with each passing minute. You run through protocol in your head again and again, terrified of making a mistake. And then suddenly, it's your turn. Queen Victoria is both exactly as you expected and nothing like you imagined. Smaller than her photographs suggest, dressed entirely in black, despite the summer heat. Her round face set in lines of perpetual serenity, but her eyes sharp, intelligent, missing nothing. Catch you off guard? Edward bows deeply beside you. You sink into the curtsy. You've practiced hundreds of times. The perfect depth, the perfect angle, your eyes lowered respectfully. Your Majesty, Edward murmurs, may I present my wife, Charlotte, Duchess of Harrington. You rise slowly from your curtsy, careful not to make any sudden movements, and find those penetrating royal eyes fixed directly on your face. So says the Queen of England, her voice surprisingly strong for a woman of her age. You are the American. Bride, stay with me here, because this is where it gets weird. Yes, Your Majesty, you reply, your voice steadier than you feel. From New York, we understand. The royalty takes you momentarily back, but you recover quickly. Yes, Mom, the Queen studies you with undisguised curiosity. We have met several American ladies in recent years. The Duchess of Marlborough, Lady Randolph Churchill, quite distinctive in their ways. You're not sure if this is a compliment or a criticism. You glance quickly at Edward, who gives no indication either way. Your father is in railroads, we believe. The Queen continues, yes, Mom, and shipping. H.M. Her gaze shifts to Edward. The Duke has brought American efficiency to the Harrington. Estates, we trust. There's something in her tone, a hint of irony, perhaps even humor, that catches you by surprise. Does the Queen know about Edward's financial difficulties? About the role your dowry has played in saving the Harrington legacy? We are working toward modernization, Your Majesty. Edward responds smoothly. The Queen's attention returns to you. And you, Duchess, are you modernizing as well? Or has England made its claim upon you already? The question feels like a test, though you're not sure what the right answer might be. Catherine's advice echoes in your mind. Be respectful, but authentic. I'm learning England's ways, ma'am, you say carefully, while trying not to forget America's virtues. Something like amusement flickers in the Queen's eyes. A diplomatic answer. We shall watch your progress with interest, Duchess of Harrington. And with that, you're dismissed. A slight nod indicating that your audience is over. You curtsy again. Edward bows, and you back away the prescribed number of steps before turning. Well, you whisper when you're at a safe distance. How did I do? Edward's expression is thoughtful. She spoke to you for longer than most, and she seemed intrigued. Is that good? It's not bad. He glances back at the royal enclosure. The Queen doesn't waste time on people who don't interest her. For the next hour, you circulate through the gardens. Now officially presented, and therefore acceptable to the highest levels of society. People who previously ignored you now seek introductions. Ladies who looked through you now invite you to their homes. Edward accepts these social victories with quiet satisfaction, like a general whose strategy has succeeded. You play your part. Perfectly, gracious, modest, just American enough to be interesting, but not so American as to be vulgar. But beneath the performance, your mind keeps returning to the financial ledgers, to the mysterious payments, to the question of what happens when the money runs out. The crowd shifts, and suddenly Lord James is at your side again. This time Edward has been drawn into conversation with a government minister several feet away, leaving you momentarily unattended. The Queen was impressed, Lord James says without preamble. I could tell from across the lawn. Were you watching me? The question comes out more flirtatiously than intended. Among others, he admits with a smile, You're the most interesting person here, Duchess. Because I'm American. Because you're observant. You watch and listen more than you speak. A rare quality in any society, English or American. The observation surprises you. You hadn't thought of your careful navigation of social rules as observation. But he's right. You've been watching, learning, evaluating from the moment you arrived. In England, my father taught me that. You say in business, the person who listens most learns most. A wise man. Lord James's expression grows more serious. I understand you've made the acquaintance of Lady Winchester and her circle. Your pulse quickens. How does he know about the dollar duchesses? Yes, I called on her last week. They're good women, smart women. His voice lowers. Women who've learned to protect themselves in a world that sees them primarily as vehicles for fortune. He knows. He understands what the group really is, what it means to you. Why are you telling me this? You ask, suddenly wary. Is this some kind of trap? Because I've seen what happens to Americanese who don't find allies. His blue eyes hold yours steadily. My sister-in-law Helen was fortunate. Many others are not. Before you can respond, Edward reappears at your side, his expression glacial as he takes in your tete-a-tete with Lord James. Charlotte, he says, his voice tight with controlled anger. Lady Pembroke is asking for you. Lord James withdraws with a bow, but not before giving you a look of unmistakable warning. Be careful, his eyes say. The rest of the garden party passes in a blur of introductions and small talk. Edward remains at your side, his hand firm on your arm, guiding you, controlling you. The earlier triumph of your presentation to the Queen is overshadowed by his obvious displeasure. In the carriage ride home, the tension between you is thick, enough to touch. I told you about Lord James, Edward says finally, his voice cold. I warned you. We were only talking you defend, in full view of hundreds of people, including the Queen. It's not about propriety, Charlotte. It's about loyalty. The word hangs between you, heavy with implication. Loyalty, as if your marriage is based on anything other than financial necessity, disguised as social advancement. Loyalty, you repeat, a dangerous edge entering your voice like your loyalty to me. His head turns sharply. What does that mean? The question of the mysterious L burns on your tongue. The evidence of his financial mismanagement, the rate at which he's depleting your dowry. But confronting him now when he's already angry seems unwise. You need more information, more allies, more security. Nothing, you say instead. I'm tired. It's been a long day. He studies you for a long moment, clearly unsatisfied with your answer, but unwilling to press further. Yes, it has, but a successful one. The Queen's interest is a significant advantage. Always calculating, always measuring advantage and position, never simply experiencing a moment for what it is. When you arrive home, you retreat to your room, claiming fatigue. In truth, you need space to think, to plan. The garden party has shifted your position in society. You're now officially accepted, presented, approved by the highest authority. But it's also brought new complications. Edward's suspicion, Lord James's warning, the knowledge that your financial situation may be even more precarious than you. Realize tomorrow is Friday. The dollar duchesses will meet again. And this time, you have questions that go beyond social survival. You need to know how the others have protected themselves, their money, their futures, because one thing is becoming increasingly clear. In this world of aristocratic privilege and ancient names, an American duchess is only as valuable as the fortune she brings. And when that fortune is gone, what remains? Sleep eludes you that night, your mind too full of questions and possibilities. By morning, you've made a decision. You need more information before confronting Edward. You need to understand exactly what you're facing and what options you have. At breakfast, he seems to have set aside his anger from yesterday, discussing the garden party with satisfaction. The Queen's interest has already borne fruit, he tells you. We've received invitations to 3 events that would have been closed to us before, including a weekend at Chadsworth with the Duke and Duchess of Devonshire. The De Vinces among the highest aristocracy, their approval, a significant social victory. You should feel triumphant. Instead, you feel like a pawn being moved across a chessboard. When you ask, trying to sound appropriately impressed, next month, after your court presentation, another test, another performance, you nod, smiling as expected, playing your role. I look forward to it. Edward leaves for his club after breakfast, mentioning that he'll be dining out that evening, some political gathering that doesn't include wives. The timing couldn't be better. You'll have the afternoon for the dollar duchesses and the evening to continue your investigation. The meeting at Catherine's house has a different energy than the previous one. Less introductory, more purposeful. The women greet you warmly, eager to hear about your audience with the Queen. She spoke to me for quite a while, you tell them. She seemed interested in the fact that I'm American. That's excellent. Sarah, Duchess of Broughton, assures you the Queen has a soft spot for Americans, despite what the old guard might have you believe. Her approval gives you a certain immunity. Immunity, you ask? Social immunity? Clara explains. With the Queens. Interest established, the worst of the aristocratic snobs will have to accept you, at least publicly. Even Lady Denore, Emma adds with a laugh. The conversation flows easily, but you're distracted, waiting for the right moment to broach the subject that's really on your mind. Finally, during a lull, you gather your courage. I need to ask you all something delicate. You begin. The women's. Attention sharpens immediately. It's about finances. The most delicate subject of all, Catherine says with a knowing smile. What about them? You hesitate, then decide honesty is your only option with these women who've become your allies. I've discovered that my husband is mismanaging my dowry significantly, and there are regular payments to someone identified only as L in his ledgers. A weighty silence falls over the room. The women exchange glances that contain entire conversations. How did you discover this? Clara asks finally. I looked in his study in his private ledgers. You feel a flush of shame at the admission. I know it was wrong, but wrong? Clara interrupts with a bark of laughter. My dear, it was survival. The only wrong would be remaining ignorant while your fortune disappears. The others nod in agreement. The payments to L, Margaret says gently. How large are they? Substantial, monthly. To an address in Chelsea. Another exchange of glances. A mistress, Louisa says bluntly. Almost certainly. The word lands like a physical blow, though you've half suspected it. A mistress. A woman Edward is supporting with your money while he lectures you about loyalty and proper behavior. I'm sorry, Charlotte, Catherine says, reaching for your hand. It's unfortunately common many. Of the English lords see marriage as a financial arrangement and seek companionship elsewhere. While expecting their wives to remain unimpeachably faithful, Clara adds bitterly, the unfairness of it burns in your chest. What can I do? That depends, Emma says carefully, on what you want. Do you want to stop the payments, confront him, or secure your own position, regardless of his concern? Activities. It's a question you haven't fully answered for yourself. The betrayal stings certainly, but your marriage was never based on love or fidelity to begin with. It was a transaction. Your money for his title. The discovery that he's keeping a mistress shouldn't be surprising. What truly concerns you is the rate at which he's depleting your dowry. That's the real threat to your future. I want to protect what's left of my money, you say finally, before it's all gone. The women nod approvingly. Good, Clara says. That's the practical approach. Emotional confrontations rarely end well for us. You have options, Catherine tells you. Legal options, financial options, but you'll need help. My husband's solicitor, you begin. No, several. Voices chorus at once. Never trust your husband's solicitor, Sarah explains. His loyalty is to your husband and the estate, not to you. You need your own representation, Catherine says. Someone who will act in your interests alone. I know someone. Lord James Winters says from the doorway. Your head snaps up in shock. The Dollar Duchesses seem surprised, but not alarmed by his sudden appearance. James. Catherine greets him. I didn't expect you until later. My appointment ended early. His gaze finds yours. I hope I'm not interrupting. Not at all. Emma says Charlotte was just asking about financial protection. Your specialty, I believe? Lord James steps fully into the room, closing the door behind him. Indeed, and increasingly necessary, from what I hear. The women make space for him in their circle, indicating a level of trust that surprises you. Lord James isn't just an acquaintance. He's an ally, admitted to their most private councils. The Duchess has discovered some concerning financial activities, Catherine explains. Lord James's expression grows serious. I suspected as much. Harrington's racing losses have been substantial lately, and there are rumors about a house in Chelsea. So Edward's financial mismanagement and mistress aren't even secrets, just open. Knowledge among those who move in the right circles. You mentioned a solicitor, you prunked, pushing aside the humiliation of having your husband's infidelity discussed so casually. Yes, George Bennett. He specializes in protecting the interests of American wives. Lord James leans forward, his expression earnest. He can help you establish a separate account, one your husband can't access. He can advise you on how to secure a portion of your dowry against future claims. Is that legal, you ask? With the right paperwork, yes, especially for an American citizen, which you still are. The possibility of financial independence, of security beyond Edward's control, sends a surge of hope through you. There would be consequences. Lord James warns. Your husband wouldn't take kindly to such actions. He's already taking every penny I brought to this marriage and spending it on racing and a mistress. You reply, a new edge in your voice. What more? Can he do? The room falls silent at directness. Then Clara laughs, a sharp approving sound. I told you she had spirit, she says to the others. She'll do just fine. For the next hour they outline a plan. Lord James will arrange a meeting with George Bennett. Catherine and Emma will accompany you, providing both support and social cover. A group of ladies shopping as far as anyone else is concerned. Clara, who has the most experience with financial manipulation, gives you specific advice on what questions to ask, what documents to request. By the time you leave Catherine's house, you have not just information, but a strategy. A way forward that doesn't depend on Edward's goodwill or the Harrington legacy. For the first time since arriving in England, you feel something like power. Not the borrowed power of a title or the reflected power of a husband, but your own power based on knowledge, allies, and the determination to protect yourself. Duchess of Harrington returns home with her head held high, ready to take control of her future, one careful step at a time. Edward doesn't return until late that night. You hear him come in, his footsteps uneven on the stairs. He's been drinking, unusual for him. You remain in your bed, finding sleep when he checks your room, as he sometimes does after late evenings. Out. The door opens, light from the hallway spilling across your bed. You keep your breathing deep and regular, eyes closed. After a moment, the door closes again. His footsteps continue down the hall to his own bedroom. Tomorrow, you'll begin implementing your plan. Tomorrow, you'll take the first steps toward independence. But tonight, you allow yourself to simply rest, secure in the knowledge that you're no longer alone in this strange new world. You dream of ledgers and secret meetings, in a future where you are more than just a dollar duchess, where you are Charlotte again, but a new Charlotte, stronger and wiser than the girl who crossed an ocean for a title. In the morning, Edward appears at breakfast, looking slightly worse for wear, evidence of his late night. He studies you over his coffee cup, a question in his bloodshot eyes. You seem different this morning, he observes. You smile. Butter your toast with steady hands, do I? Perhaps it's just the success of the garden party. As you said, the Queen's approval changes things. He accepts this explanation, but his gaze lingers on your face, searching for something he can't quite identify. The knowledge that you're keeping secrets, making plans, forming alliances, gives you a small thrill of power. I'll be out this afternoon. You tell him casually. Shopping with Lady Ashford and Lady Winchester. Or more gowns? He asks with a hint of disapproval. You've already spent a small fortune on your wardrobe. The irony of him criticizing any expenditure while he maintains a mistress in Chelsea nearly makes you laugh. Instead, you maintain your composed expression. A duchess must be properly attired, you remind him, echoing Lady Harwick's frequent refrain. Especially now that we're invited to Chatsworth. He can hardly argue with that. The visit to the Duke and Duchess of Devonshire is a significant social coup, one that requires appropriate display. Very well, he concedes. Just try to show some restraint. The bills from Madame Beaumont have been considerable. A drop in the ocean compared to his racing losses and monthly payments to L, but you merely nod in agreement. Of course, as he leaves for his club, you feel a strange mix of emotions. Anger at his hypocrisy, determination to protect yourself, and underneath it all, a faint sadness for what this marriage might have been under different circumstances. But there's no time for regrets or what-ifs. You have an appointment with a solicitor, a plan to secure your future, and a new sense of purpose that has nothing to do with being the Duchess of Harrington, and everything to do with being Charlotte. Miller. The game has changed. The rules have shifted, and you're no longer just a pawn on the aristocratic chessboard. You're a player making your own moves, determining your own fate. The Queen may have given you social acceptance, but the dollar duchesses have given you something far more valuable, a path to independence in a world designed to keep you dependent. And that more than any royal approval is worth its weight in gold, or rather in dollars, American dollars. Your dollars dot the fortune you brought to this marriage, and the portion of it you're now determined to protect, no matter what it takes. The offices of George Bennett, solicitor, occupy the second floor of a discreet building near Lincoln's Inn Fields. No grand marble entrance, no ostentatious sign announcing its presence, just a polished brass plate beside the door, and a quiet atmosphere of serious business being conducted behind closed doors that Catherine and Emma flank you as you climb the narrow staircase, their presence both comforting and protective. To anyone observing, you're simply three ladies taking tea after a shopping expedition. The hat boxes and parcels you carry, purchased hastily at Liberty's as cover, complete the illusion. The man who rises to greet you is not what you expected. George Bennett is younger than you anticipated, perhaps 40, with intelligent eyes behind wire-rimmed spectacles, and the brisk manner of someone who values efficiency over ceremony. "Your Grace," he says, bowing slightly. "Lady Ashford, Lady Winchester, please be seated." The office is small but well appointed, lined with law books and filing cabinets. No ostentation, just the tools of his trade and a desk piled with neat stacks of documents. Lord Winters has explained your situation in general terms. Bennett continues once you're settled, but I'll need specifics to advise you properly. You glance at Catherine, who nods encouragingly. Emma reaches over to squeeze your hand briefly. With their silent support, you begin to explain the dowry, the financial ledgers you discovered, the rate of expenditure. The mysterious payments to L. Bennett listens without interruption, occasionally, making notes on a pad before him. His expression reveals nothing, neither shock nor judgment. A not uncommon situation, unfortunately. He says when you finish the law, generally favors husbands in matters of marital finance, but there are strategies available, particularly for American wives. What kind of strategies, you ask? That depends on your goals, Your Grace. Are you seeking divorce? The question catches you off guard. Divorce, the nuclear option. A social catastrophe that would destroy your position and possibly send you back to America in disgrace. No, at least not at present. Bennett nods as if this is the answer he expected. Then what we're discussing is financial protection. Securing a portion of your assets beyond your husband's control. Creating a safety net should circumstances deteriorate. You think of the ledgers of the rapidly diminishing fortune of the monthly payments to the mysterious L in Chelsea. Yes, that's exactly what I want. Good, direct, and practical. Bennett adjusts his spectacles. Here's what can be done. What follows is a crash course in financial self-defense. Bennett explains the legal mechanisms available. Separate accounts. In American banks, investments in your name alone, trust arrangements that would protect a portion of your wealth for your future children while still allowing you access to the income. Your father's settlement, he asks, was it structured as a lump sum or as phased payments? A lump sum, you reply. Railroad stock transferred directly to Edward upon our marriage. Bennett frowns slightly. Less ideal than phased payments, but still workable. Do you maintain banking relationships in New York? Yes, my father's bank, merchants, and trading. Excellent. We'll establish a connection with their London correspondent, then transfer funds from the Harrington accounts gradually to avoid raising immediate concerns. He makes more notes. You'll need to secure at least one of the passbooks for the Harrington accounts. Do you have access? You think of Edward's study of the locked drawer, of the key hidden in Shakespeare. I can get access. Catherine and Emma exchange glances, part concern, part admiration. It would also be prudent, Bennett continues, to secure your personal jewelry and other valuable portable assets. Not in Harrington House, but in a bank deposit box under your control. The implications are clear. He's preparing you for the possibility of needing to leave quickly with whatever assets you can carry. Is that likely to become necessary? You? Ask a chill running through you despite the warm June day. Bennett's expression remains neutral. In my experience, when husbands discover financial independence in their wives, reactions vary widely. It's simply prudent to be prepared for all possibilities. You look to Catherine and Emma, who both nod in solemn agreement. I've seen everything from grudging acceptance to violent rage, Emma says quietly. The Earl of Winchester tried to have me committed to an asylum when I first restricted his access to my Chicago funds. What happened, you ask? Horrified. A smile flickers across Emma's face. My father sent his best corporate attorney from Chicago with enough documentation to prove my sanity and enough money to bribe 3 doctors. The Earl eventually saw reason when faced with the alternative of complete financial ruin. The story should terrify you, but instead it oddly reassures. Emma faced worse and survived. She's now a woman of confidence and power, despite her husband's attempts to control her. I understand, you say, turning back to Bennett. What do I need to sign? For the next hour, you review and sign documents, authorizations, account openings, transfer instructions. Bennett explains each one carefully, ensuring you understand exactly what you're agreeing to. The critical phase, he says, as you finalize the paperwork, will be the next 2 weeks. We need to secure the funds before the Duke becomes aware of our activities. Once the money is protected, his options become limited. And if he discovers what I've done before, then Bennett meets your gaze directly. Then the situation becomes more complicated. Do you have somewhere you could go if necessary? A friend's house, perhaps? She can come to me, Catherine says immediately. Lord Ashford is in Scotland for the summer. My house is secure. Another piece of the safety net falls into place. You're not alone anymore. You have allies, resources, options that didn't exist just days ago. As you leave Bennett's office, parcels and hat boxes still in hand to maintain the shopping charade, you feel a profound shift in your understanding of your situation. You're still the Duchess of Harrington, still bound by the rules and expectations of aristocratic society. But beneath that role, you're building something else. A foundation of independence, a network of support, a future that doesn't depend entirely on Edward's goodwill or the Harrington legacy. You did well. Catherine tells you as your carriage rolls toward Harrington House. Bennett is impressed by you. He doesn't impress easily. What happens now? You ask. Now, Emma says with a grim smile. We wait. The wheels are in motion. Your funds will be secured gradually over the next 2 weeks. Bennett will handle everything discreetly. And Edward? Catherine and Emma exchange glances. Continue as normal, Catherine advises. Give him no reason to suspect anything has changed. Once your position is secure, you can decide how to proceed. Confront him about the mistress. Negotiate new financial arrangements or simply maintain the status quo with the knowledge that you're protected. The carriage stops before Harrington House, imposing and austere against the summer sky. This house that once intimidated you now seems different. Still grand, still steeped in history, but no longer a prison. Just a place where you happen to live for now. Remember, Emma says as you prepare to descend, whatever happens, you're not alone. The sisterhood stands with you. The sisterhood, the Dollar Duchesses, American women who faced the same challenges, navigated the same treacherous waters, and emerged stronger, wiser, more powerful than before. Thank you, you say, meaning it with every fiber of your being, for everything. You climb the steps to Harrington House with your head high. No longer the terrified bride who arrived just weeks ago. You're still playing a role. Duchess, wife, aristocratic hostess. But now it's a conscious performance rather than a desperate attempt to belong. Inside the house is quiet. The servants, moving with their usual silent efficiency. There's no sign of Edward, which doesn't surprise you. He's rarely home during the day, preferring his club or the racetrack to domestic life. Stevens helps you remove your hat and gloves, eyeing the parcels with professional interest. Successful shopping, Your Grace. Very, you reply with a smile. I'll need these gowns pressed for Chatsworth next month. Of course, Your Grace. And His Grace asked me to remind you that you're dining with Lord and Lady Pembroke this evening. Another social obligation. Another performance. But this one feels different now. Less a test to be endured and more a role to be played. You're an actress on the London stage, and aristocratic society is merely your audience. The next 2 weeks pass in a carefully maintained illusion of normally. You attend dinners and music owls. You continue your lessons with Lady Harwick, who declares you almost acceptable, high praise indeed from her. You prepare for the weekend at Chatsworth. Selecting gowns and jewels with Stephen's assistance, Edward notices nothing amiss. He continues his usual routine: breakfast at home, days at his club, or attending to estate business. Evenings divided between social obligations with you and engagements you're not invited to. You don't need Bennet's investigation to confirm that many of these solo evenings are spent in Chelsea with the mysterious L every few days. Bennet sends discreet updates via Catherine. Funds transferred, accounts established, investments secured. The process is slower than you'd like, but necessary to avoid raising alarms at the bank or with Edward's financial managers. The Friday meetings with the Gawler Duchesses continue, now focused on practical advice for your new circumstances. Clara shares her strategies for managing a household budget independently of her husband. Sarah explains how she maintains social appearances while quietly building her own financial empire. Louisa offers insights on balancing the demands of aristocratic life with personal independence. The trick, she tells you one afternoon over tea at Catherine's house, is to give them what they need: the perfect hostess, the appropriate wife, the social asset, while keeping your true self separate and protected. A performance, you suggest. Exactly. They married the role, not the woman. So give them the role and keep the woman for yourself. It's a strategy born of necessity, of survival in a world that values women primarily as decorative adjuncts to male power. Not ideal, perhaps, but practical. And you're becoming increasingly practical these days. Lord James Winters appears occasionally at these gatherings, always bringing useful information or connections. He's careful to maintain a respectful distance, to give no one reason to question the propriety of your relationship. But there's an undeniable connection between you, a shared perspective, a mutual respect, a friendship that could perhaps be something more under different circumstances. You're not naive enough to imagine a romantic future with him. You're married, bound by law and custom to Edward and the Harrington name. But Lord James represents something important: the possibility of being valued for yourself, not just for your fortune or your title. The weekend at Chatsworth arrives and passes in, a blur of aristocratic splendor. The Duke and Duchess of Devonshire preside over a gathering of the highest echelon of society. Politicians, artists, fellow aristocrats, you navigate this rarefied world with growing confidence. No longer the uncertain American bride, but the Duchess of Harrington, secure in her position. Edward notices the change in you. You catch him watching you sometimes, a puzzled expression on his face, as if trying to identify what's different. You've adapted well, he tells you on the journey back to London. The Duchess of Devonshire was quite impressed. Thank you, you reply, accepting the compliment with the quiet confidence that's becoming your hallmark. It helps to understand the rules of the game. He raises an eyebrow at your choice of words. Game society. You clarify with a smile. It's all about knowing one's role, isn't it? He studies you for a moment longer, then nods slowly. Yes, I suppose it is. The final pieces of your financial protection fall into place in late July. Bennett sends confirmation via Catherine. Nearly. Half of your dowry has been secured in accounts beyond Edward's reach. Not the entire fortune, but enough to ensure your independence if necessary. The time has come to decide your next move. Confront Edward about the mistress. Negotiate new financial arrangements. Maintain the status quo with your newfound security as a private triumph. The decision is made for you on a rainy Tuesday afternoon when Edward returns home unexpectedly. His expression thunderous, a telegram clutched in his hand. What is the meaning of this? He demands, storming into the morning room where you're reviewing household accounts with Mrs. Hughes. Mrs. Hughes withdraws immediately, closing the door behind her. You remain seated, outwardly calm, despite the racing of your heart. The meaning of what, Edward? He slaps the telegram down on the table before you. It's from his bank, expressing concern about unusual transfer patterns from the Harrington accounts and requesting an urgent meeting. So, the moment of truth has arrived. Sooner than you'd hoped, but not entirely unexpected. Ah, you say, keeping your voice steady. I see they've noticed. Noticed. His voice rises in disbelief. Noticed what exactly? What have you done, Charlotte? You meet his gaze directly, drawing strength from the knowledge that you're protected now, that you have options. Beyond simply submitting to his anger, I've secured my future, you reply. A portion of my dowry has been transferred to accounts in my name. The color drains from his face, then returns in a flush of rage. You had no right. I had every right. You interrupt, surprising both him and yourself with your firmness. It was my money, Edward, my father's fortune, that saved the Harrington estates from complete collapse. He stares at you, momentarily speechless at your directness. How did you? Who told you? He stops, understanding, dawning in his eyes. You went through my private papers. Yes, you admit without apology. I needed to understand the true state of our finances. Our finances, he repeats incredulously. There is no our Charlotte. When you married me, everything you brought became mine. That's the law. The law has flexibility when it comes to American wives, you informed him, echoing Bennett's words. Especially when their husbands are depleting their fortunes at an alarming rate. His face darkens further. Is this Winter's doing? Has he been filling your head with ideas? This is my doing, you correct him. My decision, my future. Edward begins to pace, running a hand through his hair in agitation. Do you have any idea what you've done? The scandal. If this becomes known, it won't become known unless you choose to make it. So, you point out calmly, I have no intention of making our financial arrangements public. Do you? The question stops him short. Of course, he doesn't want a public scandal. His position, his precious legacy, depends on maintaining appearances. What do you want? He asks. Finally, his voice cold. Is this some kind of blackmail? You almost laugh at the irony. No, Edward, this is self-preservation. I've seen the ledgers. I know how quickly you're burning through my dowry. I know about the racing losses, the failed investments. I know about the house in Chelsea. His head snaps up at the last reference. What do you know about Chelsea? Enough, you say simply. I'm not asking for a divorce. I'm not threatening to expose anything. I'm simply securing my future and incidentally yours, because when the money runs out, what happens to the Harrington? Legacy, then? It's a question he's clearly been avoiding. And it lands like a blow. He sinks into a chair, the anger draining from him, replaced by something that might almost be respect. What exactly have you done? He asks after a long silence. Secured. Approximately half of my dowry in separate accounts, you explain. The income remains available for appropriate Harrington expenses, household costs, necessary estate improvements, legitimate business ventures, but not for gambling, not for personal entertainment in Chelsea. His mouth tightens at your bluntness. But he doesn't deny the implications. And the other half, he inquires with forced casualness, remains under your control for now. Consider it a gesture of goodwill. In truth, Bennett hadn't been able to secure more than half without raising two. Many red flags. But Edward doesn't need to know that. You've changed, he observes after studying you for a moment. Isn't the girl who arrived from New York? No, you agree. It isn't. Another long silence falls between you. The tick of the mantel clock the only. Sound in the room. Finally, Edward speaks. What happens now? It's a reasonable question. What does happen now? You've secured your financial position, confronted the reality of your marriage, established your independence, but you're still the Duchess of Harrington, still bound to this man and his legacy, at least in the eyes of society. Now we continue. You say simply, you as Duke, me as Duchess. We maintain our social obligations, our public roles. We build the Harrington position, as we've been doing. And privately, you consider this carefully. What do you want from this marriage beyond security? Certainly not love. That possibility vanished the moment you discovered the mistress in Chelsea. Not even particular affection. Edward has never shown much interest in you as a person, only as an asset. Privately, we establish new boundaries. You decide. I won't interfere with your personal affairs as long as they remain discreet. In return, I expect the same courtesy regarding my friendships and financial decisions. Friendships, he repeats, a hint of his earlier suspicion returning with Winters. You meet his gaze steadily. My friendship with Lord James is entirely proper. It will remain so. But yes, I consider him a friend along with Lady Ashford, Lady Winchester, and others who have helped me adjust to life in England. Edward's jaw works as he processes this. You can almost see the calculations running behind his eyes. The scandal of confrontation versus the benefits of accommodation. The cost of fighting you versus the advantage of compromise. And if I refuse these terms, he asks finally, then we have a problem, you reply calmly. One that would benefit neither of us. Another long moment of silence. Then, surprisingly, Edward laughs. A short, genuine sound of reluctant admiration. You would have made a formidable businessman, Charlotte. I learned from my father, you remind him. He didn't raise me to be decorative, despite what you and Lady Howick might prefer. Edward rises, straightens his jacket, reassembling his ducal dignity. I will need to speak with my solicitor about these arrangements. Of course, Mr. Bennet is available to discuss the details with him. It's all quite legal, I assure you. His eyebrows rise at Bennet's name, clearly recognizing it, which suggests Bennet's reputation for protecting American wives is well established. I see you've been thorough, Edward observes dryly. Another quality I might have appreciated under different circumstances. We work with the circumstances we have, you reply, not the ones we might wish for. He studies you for a moment longer, then nods. Not quite in agreement, but in acknowledgement of the new reality between you. We will speak more of this later, he says, moving toward the door. I have appointments. This afternoon. In Chelsea, you suspect, but that's no longer your concern. As long as he maintains discretion and accepts your new financial arrangement, what he does with his afternoons is his own affair. When the door closes behind him, you remain seated, allowing the tension of the confrontation to drain from your body. It went better than you'd feared, but perhaps not as well as you'd hoped. A negotiated peace rather than a decisive victory. But perhaps that's the nature of aristocratic marriage. A series of private accommodations beneath the public performance of unity, not so different from many marriages, regardless of social class. You rise, cross to the window, look out at the London summer beyond the glass. The city that once seemed so foreign, so intimidating, now feels almost like home. Not because you've been absorbed into its ways, but because you've carved out your own place within them. The door opens softly behind you. Stevens, appearing with her usual silent efficiency. Your Grace, Lady Ashford is called. She awaits you in the blue drawing room. Catherine, here to learn the outcome of your confrontation with Edward, no doubt. Thank you, Stevens. I'll go to her now. Catherine rises as you enter the drawing room, her expression anxious. Charlotte, Mrs. Hughes sent. Word. Is everything all right? Yes, you assure her, closing the door for privacy. Edward discovered the transfers. We've had a discussion, and Catherine's concern is palpable, and we've reached an understanding. You smile slightly. Not friendship, certainly not love, but a workable arrangement. He keeps his freedom, I keep mine, and we both maintain the public. Facade necessary for our positions. Catherine releases a breath of relief. That's better than many achieve. Some husbands never accept any degree of independence in their wives. Edward is practical. If nothing else, you observe. He knows his lifestyle depends on maintaining at least some access to my fortune. Complete rupture would benefit neither of us. Catherine studies you with a mixture of pride and wonder. Look at you. 6 weeks ago, you were a terrified bride in a strange country. Now you're negotiating terms with the Duke. The observation makes you laugh. A significant transformation, I suppose, more than significant, miraculous, and yet entirely earned. She takes your hands in hers. You've done what many of us took years to achieve. Established your independence while maintaining your position. It's a delicate balance few manage successfully. Later that evening, after Catherine is gone and the house is settled into its nighttime rhythms, you sit at your dressing table as Stevens brushes your hair for bed. The familiar ritual is soothing after the emotional turbulence of the day. Will there be anything else? Your Grace Stevens asks as she sets the brush down. No, thank you. That will be all for tonight. When she's gone, you remain at the dressing table, studying your reflection in the mirror. The face that looks back at you is still young. You're barely 21, but the eyes hold a wisdom that wasn't there when you arrived in England. You're not the same Charlotte Miller who left New York as a bride. That girl, raised in privilege but sheltered from reality, no longer exists. In her place is a woman who has faced betrayal, navigated treacherous social waters, built alliances, and secured her own future. The Duchess of Harrington is no longer just a title you wear like an ill-fitting gown. It's become part of you, not the whole, but a facet of the complex woman you're becoming. Tomorrow will bring new challenges, new negotiations, new performances. On the aristocratic stage, the weekend at Chadsworth was only the beginning of your social ascent, now powered not just by Edward's title, but by your own growing confidence and connections. There will be more garden parties, more presentations, more carefully choreographed interactions with the highest levels of society. There will be seasons at Harrington Park, the country estate you've yet to visit, where you'll preside as chatelaine, over an entirely different social world. And through it all, you'll maintain your dual existence, the perfect duchess in public, the independent woman in private. You'll continue meeting with the dollar duchesses, building your network of support and information. You'll manage your secured fortune, perhaps even grow it through careful investment as your father taught you. You might even in time find something like happiness. Not the fairy tale romance you once dreamed of perhaps, but a life of purpose, power, and genuine connection with those who see you for who you truly are. Outside your window, London stretches into the summer night, the city of opportunity and danger, tradition and change. You're no longer afraid of it, no longer overwhelmed by its complexities and contradictions. You've made it your own, just as you've made the title of Duchess your own, on your terms, by your rules, with your American spirit intact beneath the English veneer. Not bad for a dollar princess who arrived just 6 weeks ago, terrified and alone. Not bad at all. The night deepens around Harrington House, somewhere across town, in a house in Chelsea. Edward is probably with his mistress, the mysterious Elle, who unknowingly played a role in your awakening. In her own way, she helped set you free. Free from illusions about your marriage. Free from the naive belief that titles and traditions would somehow transform your life into a fairy tale. In Catherine's elegant townhouse, the dollar duchesses might be discussing your victory, planning their next strategies for survival and success in this gilded world they've married into. In George Bennet's office, financial transfers continue, securing your future, £1 at a time. And here in your bedroom at Harrington House, you prepare for sleep, not as a prisoner in a gilded cage, but as a woman who has found her strength, her voice, her place in a world never designed for her independence. Tomorrow will come with its duties and demands, its performances and pretenses. But tonight you rest easy, secure in the knowledge that whatever the future holds, you will face it on your own terms. As you slip between the sheets of your massive bed, no longer quite so cold, no longer quite so foreign, you smile at the thought of all the American heiresses yet to come. All the future dollar princesses who will cross the Atlantic seeking titles and finding transformation instead. Perhaps someday you'll be the one offering guidance to a terrified young bride from New York or Chicago or San Francisco. Perhaps you'll be the Catherine to someone else's Charlotte, extending a hand of friendship across the divide between worlds. The thought comforts you as sleep approaches, your body relaxing into the soft mattress, your mind drifting toward dreams, not of princes or fairy tales, but of something far more valuable, a future you've built with your own hands, a life you've claimed as your own. Sleep comes easily tonight, deep and peaceful. The Duchess of Harrington rests, gathering strength for tomorrow's performance. But Charlotte, the real Charlotte, the woman beneath the title, she dreams of freedom, of friendship, of the unexpected journey that brought her across an ocean and into herself. And somewhere in that space, between sleeping and waking, between the girl you were and the woman you've become, you find something that feels remarkably like